FPS Win. Written by
嘟嘟雪球
Chapter 258. The company, the first formal interview of the Dongfeng Corps, was successfully concluded. Chen Chen was very satisfied, but also a little regretful. What's satisfying is that the people Lao Zhu found are all pretty good. Unfortunately, he didn't find the person he was looking for, a military doctor. In the Villa command room, Chen Chen took everyone's resume and began to discuss the selection of these newcomers. That's so in general, these two brothers must stay. Their overall personalities are very stable and they're very obedient. At the same time, they have strong business capabilities, especially their good physical fitness, which is very noteworthy. The more energetic one is, the more capable one is of accomplishing great things. They're not young anymore, they're all 26 years old, and they can still maintain this level of physical strength, which shows that they are naturally gifted. Hearing Chen Chen's words, Cheng Lei nodded in conviction and replied, I think it's okay. They didn't make any fatal mistakes. But this one called Chaipa, I suggest you eliminate him. It's not because of his identity, but because he has too many bad habits in his technique. He relies entirely on his sense of aiming, and he even shoots at an angle. There's absolutely no way to train him. His ceiling is just here. What a shame. He's a good talent. Chen Chen hummed, but did not answer. He was actually also struggling, because as Cheng Lei said, Chaipa was indeed a good seedling who was delayed by Pu Bei's backward military education and military training. His gun sense is amazing, even as good as my current self. However, his basic movements were also shockingly poor and were completely unskillful. Chen Chen knew that some amateur military literature and TV dramas always liked to describe the unconventional forces beating the regular army. He admitted that there were such cases in reality, but the advantage of such unconventional forces was only in the entry stage. A very simple example is what Cheng Lei said about tilting the gun body. Many talented players feel that shooting at an angle is more comfortable and more accurate, but this is really a fatal flaw. When shooting at long distances, if your gun is tilted even a little, the bullet's landing point will be drastically different. When Chen Chen first started practicing shooting, he was hit by the squad leader so many times because of this problem, and it took him a lot of effort to adjust. But this Chai Pa has indeed been finalized and cannot be changed. How about being an assault? I think you're still useful, right? Bai Go interrupted, while Cheng Lei continued to shake his head and said, no, it's just a typical question, but in reality, he has more problems. For example, when shooting from behind cover, you subconsciously stick your head out to observe before raising your gun, or you act cautiously while crawling, or you don't trust your teammates and always turn around to observe during combat coordination. I admit that this can all be practiced and corrected. But if there are better options, why do we need him? Besides him, we still have 8 people. Isn't that enough for the first enrollment expansion? That is indeed enough. This time, even Sure Dakai nodded. Let's not have this person anymore. We didn't have a choice before, but now we have a choice, so it will definitely be okay to choose him. Hearing his words, Bai Go couldn't help but sigh. He valued talent, and he had actually seen how those ruffians in the Lion Corps were trained and fought, so he felt it was a pity for Chai Pa to be killed. But at the same time, he also knew that the situation of the Dongfeng Corps had changed, and it was really difficult to keep this person. Then forget it. Opinions were finally reached, and except for Chaipa, other candidates were discussed one by one, and all were finally approved. Chen Chen informed Lao Zhu of the result, and the latter naturally smiled happily. The hard work during this period was not in vain. Isn't this halfway to the goal of 30 people? Rounding it off, it is completed. So, he immediately applied to Chen Chen to join the team. He really couldn't wait to make money. But Chen Chen did not agree. What a joke. You're gonna fight. Who will help me recruit people? Of course, Chen Chen didn't want to dampen his enthusiasm. So he directly gave Lao Zhu a large bonus of $3,000 per person. The latter smiled happily and went back to his recruitment work. In a sense, he was doing the same thing as the action team. They're all headhunters. So, the first round of expansion ended like this. After the enrollment expansion was completed, Chen Chen did something quite radical. That is, all personnel will be equipped with 416 Hong Kong dollars. After several consecutive battles, the number of 416 Hong Kong dollars guns they seized had reached 28, which was more than enough for each person to receive one. This is a critical watershed. Not a watershed in firearms upgrades, but a watershed in sight upgrades. Having optical aiming and not having optical aiming are two absolute concepts in modern light infantry combat. This is a basic principle that anyone who has truly experienced actual combat will not question. Of course, you can say that the demand for infantry and individual soldier capabilities in modern warfare is constantly decreasing, but Chen Chen believes that if there is a way to equip infantry with more powerful individual weapons and more powerful sighting and observation equipment, no team in the world will refuse. As for the issues of adaptive training and ammunition supply, that can all be overcome. Compared with the improvement in combat effectiveness, these difficulties are nothing. Therefore, the new recruits who had just joined the Dongfeng Corps caught this good opportunity. Looking at the brand new guns in their hands and the sights they had never seen before, they even had a feeling of extreme unreality. Shit, a new boss. Why does it feel like a different world? How could the team I was in before afford such a gun? As the saying goes, comparison makes one feel nauseous. In the following period of time, all Dongfeng Corps entered the rhythm of adaptive training. Veterans have to adapt to new guns, while new recruits have to adapt to the tactical rhythm of the entire team. This is not a process that can be completed quickly, but it is necessary to prepare for battle. At the same time, while they were conducting intensive and orderly training, their enemies on the other side had also begun to sharpen their claws. Dakali, 505 Brigade Command. Zhao Jiaoyang listened to the adjutant's report with a gloomy face, and confirmed that all members of the Shadow Corps were killed, and his cousin Zhao Huisheng was also killed. His heart was filled with anger, but not a single bit of it showed on his face. He regrets it very much. It's not that he regretted being the enemy of the Dongfeng Corps, but that he regretted not decisively eliminating them in Dakali. In the end, I was frightened by their power and the shadow behind them. But now that I think about it, who the hell doesn't have some background? In the final analysis, they are just mercenaries. You can kill the Shadow Legion, but I can't kill you? Unfortunately, it's too late. It's too late for me to understand this truth. Once you miss an opportunity, it will be extremely difficult to make up for it. Zhao Jiaoyang sighed, looked at his adjutant, and asked, "When will Army 8 arrive?" 2 days. At most 2 days will be enough to prepare it. Hearing this answer, Zhao Jiaoyang nodded slowly, and then said, "Once the helicopter arrives, don't wait. Pull up the bombs, fly over, and blow them all up." The training of the Dongfeng Corps can actually be said to be step by step. Even after training for a few days, Chen Chen inexplicably developed a feeling of good times. The reason is very simple. After Cheng Lei and his group arrived, the entire training system became more scientific and more regular. He even wanted to restore the tradition of singing before meals and focus on ideological and work-style construction. But Chen Chen persuaded him. After all, the Dongfeng Corps was a mercenary group, and a colorless state was the best state. If you try to diet, you'll be in big trouble. As I said, let business be business. Cheng Lei was naturally just in a spur of the moment, and after listening to Chen Chen's explanation, he readily agreed. From then on, he was only responsible for some technical issues in training and no longer got involved in deeper things. Thus, the Dongfeng Corps entered a stable period of development. However, while the situation in Mengka has stabilized, the situation near Jingdong and Mengxiu has become tense. After Hebangxiu, Hebupa also found Chen Chen and consulted him about the specific defense strategy. However, he visited and inquired in person. In order to avoid the suspicion of acting alone, he naturally had to bring Bao Xiaomei along, and the three of them met in the combat command room of the Dongfeng Corps. Bao Xiaomei was dressed as flamboyantly as always, and Chen Chen couldn't help but feel confused when he saw her overly sophisticated makeup and hairstyle. You might say this woman is a vase, but she is not. After all, relying on her relationship with the Bao family, she was able to get the best of both worlds and accomplish many things. But if you say that she is a strong woman and a hero, then that is pure false praise. Because when she does some things, her way of handling them is always very rough, and it just barely meets the standard of working. If she had put the time and energy she used to focus on her female advantages into more useful things, would she have ultimately reached a higher position? Chen Chen is not Bao Xiaomei, so he cannot answer this question. But anyway, everyone has his own path, and it's not his place to comment. Therefore, no matter how Bao Xiaomei showed off her charm in front of Chen Chen always remained calm. When Bao Xiaomei said half coquettishly and half approvingly, "Mr. Chen has neglected his old friends because of his big job," Chen Chen just replied in an extremely official manner, "I've been quite busy with business matters recently. I hope Miss Bao and Brigade Commander, he can understand." Hearing his words, Hebupa said tactfully, "The situation in Jingdong is indeed quite tense. I have also communicated with Hebangxiu. He is adjusting the defense line according to the instructions of Commander Chen." According to Hebangxiu, this adjustment was quite effective. There were several small-scale frictions between the Myanmar Army in Kangtung and the 756th Brigade of Palau, and the 756th Brigade won a great victory in each case. If this trend continues, even if the 505th Brigade joins the battle, the 756th Brigade will be able to hold them off, and it will buy us enough time. Having said this, Hebupa paused for a few seconds. Chen Chen realized that he was about to say but, so he did not interrupt but just looked at Hebupa quietly, and sure enough, his next sentence was a but. However, it is not just the 756th Brigade that is under pressure at the moment. On our side, the Mengxiu defense is also under pressure. Captain Chen, as you know, we have only deployed 600 troops on the Mengxiu defense line, and we don't have enough heavy weapons. However, this line of defense has to withstand the pressure from 2 regiments of the Jinglong Burmese army with nearly 2,000 people. If we can't hold it or delay it, the Burmese army will cross the Nujung River and head east, threatening Mengka, forcing our troops near Wampai on the north side of Jingdong to return to defend and break the deadlock in Jingdong. By that time, the situation will be very bad. Hearing what Hebupa said, Chen Chen nodded slowly. This judgment is indeed without any water in it, and it is indeed the main difficulty currently faced by the coalition forces. Yes, the 7th Brigade was indeed in talks with the Burmese army, but the talks were only to buy time for the fight. Before a head-on fight, the Burmese army would not give in to the 7th Brigade. But once a head-on battle breaks out, whether the 7th Brigade defenders of the Mengxiu defense line can hold out is another question. So, what's your plan? Chen Chen asked. Hebupa has laid so much groundwork. It is impossible that he is simply here to complain to me, nor is it possible that he is satisfied with just a few suggestions from me. In this case, it would be better for him to be direct and put everyone's demands on the table for discussion. Hebupa did not feel the slightest bit shy about this. He sat up straight, looked at Chen Chen and said, "Commander Chen, we need a big win. A big, proactive victory near Mengxiu. We don't have the ability to achieve such a big victory, so we need the assistance of the Dongfeng Corps. I hope you can command the 2nd Regiment of the 7th Brigade, which is the Mengxiu garrison. I also hope that the Dongfeng Corps can participate in the battle. Let me take charge." Chen Chen's brows furrowed slightly, and he was a little dazed for a moment. Damn, when I was talking with Hebangxiu before, I had a hunch that the command of the coalition forces might end up in my hands. Now only a few days have passed, and this thing actually happened. He subconsciously wanted to refuse, because according to the original plan, he really didn't intend to get too deeply involved in such a large-scale operation. But on second thought, if I didn't intervene, Meng Xiu might not be able to defend it. Not to mention that the Burmese army has 2,000 people. Even if half of them were reduced, the militia of the 7th Brigade would not be able to contend with them in a frontal combat. We really have to fight. However, this time the battle is directly against the Burmese army, and the Dongfeng Corps must not participate. We can only win by command and tactics. Thinking of this, Chen Chen asked, how is the Burmese army's garrison situation near Mingxiu? As soon as these words came out, Hebupa's eyes lit up immediately. He knew that as long as Chen Chen asked, there was hope, so he quickly replied, at present, the main force of the Burmese army is mainly concentrated near a village called Pagoda to the west of Mingxiu. It is a hilly area, slightly higher than Mingxiu, and across the river from Mingxiu, about 6 kilometers away. According to the results of the previous investigation, the Myanmar army has deployed a total of 3 lines of defense there, and has also occupied 2 key points, the Blacksmith Monastery and the Friends and Relatives Museum. These 2 points form a triangle with Pagoda village, with the Friends and Relatives Museum as the top point pointing to Mingxiu. If they want to launch an attack, they will most likely use the garrison at the Friends and Family Museum as the vanguard. What we want to do is to defeat their deployment here first. Chen Chen looked at the map hanging on the wall and roughly marked the position of the Burmese army according to Hebupa's guidance. At first glance, he found that although the combat effectiveness of the Burmese army was poor, their middle and high-level officers had all received certain military theory education. The 3 points are not arranged in a simple wedge shape, but the Friends and Relatives Museum is in front, which is position number 1. The Blacksmith Monastery is on the northwest side, which is position number 2, and the main force of Pagoda is connected with the Friends and Relatives Museum to form the vertex of an isosceles triangle. With such an arrangement, it is extremely convenient for the main force to provide support in any direction. And when using long-range artillery, the deployment of positions is also more flexible. On the other hand, the position of the 2nd Regiment of the 7th Brigade was simply to set up camp on an abandoned golf course on the west side of Mingxiu City. The troops were simply dispersed to defend several suburban strongholds. Not to mention supporting each other, the strongholds probably could not even communicate with each other. Compared with the Myanmar army, the difference is obvious. In this situation, the Burmese army did not push forward. I'm afraid they were really frightened by the previous 2 shots, and Hebupa's private soldiers wearing level 4 armor. Damn, hit it with a hammer. It turns out that the current stalemate was caused not by the 7th Brigade, but by his own Dongfeng Corps. Chen Chen couldn't help but sigh. In his opinion, there was really no way to defeat Mingxiu. Unless the 7th Brigade is determined to rely on this small town to fight urban street fighting with the Burmese army, with the main goal of attacking the enemy's logistics, it is hard to say whether the 7th Brigade can hold out for half an hour once a positional battle breaks out. Thinking of this, he shook his head and said, there is no way to fight. It's no use for you to come to me. At this time, Miss Bao must take action. We should deploy all the necessary personnel and equipment. Otherwise, if Mengxiu is lost, the situation we have worked so hard to build will be lost. Hearing his words, Bao Xiaomei's face immediately became solemn. She hesitated for a few seconds and asked, is there no other way? It is too early for Hua State to join the war now, which may have an adverse impact on our later negotiations. What we need is a gradual approach, a slow and steady approach, to make some things fait accompli, and then let the Hua State have the final word. If Hua State enters the market now, it means we have revealed our final trump card, and I'm afraid Myanmar will not remain indifferent. Dilemma. Chen Chen had to admit that Bao Xiaomei's judgment was correct, because once Hua State entered the scene, it would mean that most areas of Pubei would enter the rhythm of rebellion. All agreements reached previously would be torn up, and the situation of limited peace would also be broken. The Myanmar side will be forced into a corner and will have to organize a large-scale counterattack, and the consequences of this are really beyond the ability of the ethnic armed groups to bear. Therefore, even if Hua State wants to participate, they can only take off their clothes before participating, which means they are likely to face uncontrollable risks and losses. TSK Miss Bao, are you also walking on thin ice? Chen Chen did not speak, and the discussion among the 3 of them came to a standstill. It seems that the only solution is to let the Dongfeng Corps directly participate in the war, and then use the advantages of firepower and tactics to launch a precise strike on the Mingxiu Burmese army to achieve the corresponding strategic goals. But the question is, why should the Dongfeng Corps do something that the Hua State does not want to do? The cooperation and game between the 3 parties fell into a very delicate situation. No one wanted Mingxiu to fall, but the loss caused by the fall of Mingxiu was slightly less than the price that the Hua State and the Dongfeng Corps had to pay to defend Mingxiu. Someone has to compromise. Chen Chen turned to Bao Xiaomei and said, Ms. Bao, I have done everything I can. I think it is time for you to do something about it, right? Bao Xiaomei smiled warmly, but her attitude did not give in at all. Mr. Chen, please be a good person to the end. I can provide help in many aspects, including equipment, supplies, and logistics. But people really can't do that. At least not now. Hearing her answer, Chen Chen sighed. In that case, let's negotiate terms. We can do what you don't want to do, but what compensation can you give us? Washington, Bao Xiaomei answered without hesitation. It was obvious that before coming, she had already thought about the real conditions she wanted to discuss. Mr. Chen, I said a long time ago that I could use my connections to turn Dongfeng Corps into a real PMC company. You don't want to participate in direct combat with the Burmese army. It's nothing more than a matter of identity. Now, I can provide you with this channel to help you and the people behind you do what you don't want to do. Indonesia, remember? Chen Chen nodded slowly. Indeed, Bao Xiaomei had put forward this condition a long time ago. At that time, the Dongfeng Corps had not yet developed to the point where it must have an identity, so he rejected her without hesitation. But now, this has indeed become a step that he has to take, and if he can use the mature relationships of the Bao family to accomplish this step, it will definitely be a good thing for the Dongfeng Corps, Chen Chen himself and Xiaoyu. Very tempting. Chen Chen thought for a moment and finally nodded and said, "Okay, but it's not enough. I can get your identity. You can be an Indonesian citizen with an ID. From now on, you don't have to be limited to Pubei anymore. You can go anywhere you want, even the United States. The business of the Dongfeng Corps can be expanded outward. If necessary, you can even take your people away from Pubei. How about this condition? Is it enough?" Bao Xiaomei's eyes became serious for a rare moment. Chen Chen was silent for a few seconds, and then said, "It's not enough. I must be an Indonesian citizen first, and then I can have the Dongfeng Corps. It's quite difficult, but it's doable." Bao Xiaomei breathed a sigh of relief. This three-party game finally ended in the form of a transaction. For herself, this was a major concession, because this means that Hua State has completely lost the opportunity to control the Dongfeng Corps. But in order to achieve the goal she's trying to achieve now, she feels it is worth it. Then, a smile appeared on her face again. "Mr. Chen, then we can have a pleasant cooperation, right? What a shame. I've always wanted to start a company with Mr. Chen. Maybe I could even be the boss's wife. But now it seems there is no chance." "Yes," Chen Chen said politely. "However, we can form a partnership, but I'm afraid the boss lady can't." Hearing this, Bao Xiaomei's expression changed slightly, but in the end, she just laughed it off. "In that case, Mingxiu's affairs will be handed over to Mr. Chen. Brigade Commander He, please hand it over as soon as possible. The situation does not wait for anyone. On the battlefield, every minute and every second is precious. Mr. Chen, from now on, you are the real boss." After determining the subsequent direction, Chen Chen sent He Bupa and Bao Xiaomei away, and sat in the command room, tapping the table unconsciously while thinking about the subsequent combat plan. In fact, if the Eastern Corps is directly involved, the strike against the Burmese army in Mengxiu would be quite simple because technically, the Eastern Corps can still completely crush the Burmese army. The trick of artillery reconnaissance plus indirect artillery fire alone can bring absolute firepower advantage to the 7th Brigade, combined with helicopter airstrikes under limited conditions. Although it is unlikely to directly eliminate all the Burmese troops in a position, after gaining a local advantage, it is not difficult to complete the capture of the point by letting the 7th Brigade cooperate in the charge. The most important issue now is to conduct reconnaissance on the Burmese army's positions, clarify the enemy's detailed deployment, determine its firepower and personnel configuration, find out the weak points of the positions, and finally determine the attack plan. The funny thing is that in Mengxiu, the 7th Brigade has been confronting the Burmese army for nearly a month, but they have not even completed this most basic step, forcing the Dongfeng Corps to do it themselves. Fortunately, the Dongfeng Corps' reconnaissance capability has now reached a very high level. It is equipped with a full range of reconnaissance equipment, and its personnel quality has also been greatly improved. It is not difficult to achieve the goal. Chen Chen planned to arrange for Bao Qi and Lin He to lead a fire reconnaissance team to Mengxiu for reconnaissance first, while he himself would stay in Mengka to complete the handover with He Bupa and understand all aspects of the 2nd Regiment of the 7th Brigade in order to intervene in the command of this team. That's right, just intervene, not take over. In fact, there is no doubt that Chen Chen has no practical experience in commanding large-scale military operations, because in his previous life, he was a Special Forces soldier, and most of his missions were special operations. Even in the largest operation, the total number of combatants under his command was less than 40 people. Therefore, he would not be so arrogant as to directly take over the command of a team of 600 people. Instead, he planned to make specific coordination requests to He Bupa after understanding the specific situation, and let him cooperate with the Dongfeng Corps to complete subsequent combat operations. Compared with the direct command that He Bupa expected, this plan is safer and more practical. After all, a general knowing his soldiers is the most basic requirement. If you can't even do this, how can you command? A regiment has 6 companies. If you let the first company fight northward, and they are frightened and retreat in front of the battlefield after being swept by machine guns, who can you complain to? Commanding a large army group only sounds good. But the reality is that no matter how talented you are and how good your command ability is, you will still lose the battle before the commander and the combat team have completed the running in. Under the current circumstances, neither side can afford the cost of trial and error, so strategic radicalism must not permeate down to tactics. Being conservative, cautious, and treading on thin ice are the keys to victory. With the direction basically clear, Chen Chen immediately summoned the core group members of the Dongfeng Corps and completed the briefing on the combat plan. After that, the reconnaissance team set off immediately, and Chen Chen took out his phone and called Xiaoyu directly. He had to synchronize his plan with Xiaoyu. This was a very simple principle. In a battle between mercenaries, you could fight however you wanted, but once it involved official forces, he had to at least inform her. This is why, before assisting the 7th Brigade in the attack and launching an aerial assault, Chen Chen told Xiaoyu about his plan, but when he was chasing the Shadow Legion, he did not have any contact with Xiaoyu from beginning to end. Because of the different goals, the impacts caused are also completely different. The call was connected quickly. Xiaoyu did not seem to expect Chen Chen to call her at this time, and there was some doubt in her tone. "Shipwreck? What's going on?" "We are ready to participate in the attack on the Burmese army in Mengxiu. We want to hold the Mengxiu defense line and win bargaining chips for Northern Shan State." After hearing this, Xiaoyu was silent for a full half-minute. Chen Chen realized that she might be transferring the line to someone who needs to hear this call, so he didn't urge her. After a long pause, Xiaoyu finally asked, "Why? Hua State refuses to participate." "Yes, now all parties have agreed to use Hua State, as the last trump card. If they participate now, the coalition forces will lose the initiative in politics, and the whole thing will easily be dragged into the category of pure armed conflict, which is very disadvantageous to us. I'm not trying to help any party gain any benefits, nor do I intend to promote anything, but a stable environment is too important for us. Once Mingxiu is lost, this stable environment will no longer exist, and we will also lose the barrier we have built with great difficulty. So, I had to make this choice. Chen Chen answered without any reservation, because he knew very well that even if he didn't say these words himself, the Bao family of Hua State would definitely use various channels to report them. And sure enough, after hearing his explanation, Xiaoyu did not show any surprise. She just said, and then said, that's understandable. Is it possible that you don't have to get directly involved? I mean, Connor can command the Burmese army, and you can also command the 7th Brigade, right? But to be honest, I don't have the ability. Chen Chen said helplessly. He knew very well that the plan proposed by Xiaoyu was of course the best one. If the Dongfeng Corps stayed out of the matter, and then relied on advanced command, and used the limited few hundred people of the 7th Brigade to defend the Mengxiu defense line, then all the problems that Xiaoyu and he were worried about would no longer be a problem. But the problem is, no matter how strong a person's ability is, there is a limit, right? To be honest, Chen Chen felt that even if he asked Man Guangji to do this job, he might not be able to handle it. In Chen Chen's opinion, Xiaoyu's suggestion really seemed a bit amateurish. However, he did not expect that Xiaoyu's next sentence would make him freeze in place. She said, I don't mean for you to directly command the 7th Brigade in combat. You don't command the main army. You only command Hobu Pa's private soldiers. This group of people far surpasses other ordinary militias in terms of organization and combat effectiveness, and their equipment has also been strengthened. If 600 people can't beat 1,000 people, can 200 people still beat them? Holy shit, genius. Chen Chen was completely stunned. This suggestion seemed nonsensical, but if you think about it carefully, it is really a genius idea. That's right, if there are too many people, the difficulty of command will increase sharply, and the ultimate result will be command disorder and total collapse. But what if there are only 200 people? Even with Chen Chen's ability, he can easily control them, and he can control them very well. Although the number of people is insufficient, the losses will be huge. But so what? These are Hebupa's soldiers. No matter how big the losses are, he will bear them himself. Chen Chen really felt like he had suddenly been enlightened. He couldn't help but sigh and say, why else would it be you guys? I can try. Xiaoyu on the other side was obviously relieved, and asked in a slightly teasing tone, no way. As the leader of the group, you didn't even think of this plan? I've been in Pubei for too long, and my mindset has become fixed. Then I'll try it first. Of course, if it still doesn't work, we'll have to do it. Okay. As a last resort, Xiaoyu hesitated for a moment and continued. But once the Dongfeng Corps joins the war, your identity issues must be resolved. What do you think? We will set up a legal company in Indonesia to verify our identity as overseas mercenaries. Who's going to do it? Bao Xiaomei. After the words fell, Xiaoyu fell silent again. After several seconds, she said, oh, Miss Bao, don't be so sarcastic. I asked you to do it. Can you do it? Indeed, I can't do it. I reminded you not to get too close to her, so you should know your limits. Chen Chen sighed helplessly. To be honest, if there were other options, he would definitely not choose Bao Xiaomei. But the problem now is that it is impossible for the North to intervene and solve the identity problem for itself. Even if it wants to solve it, it will have to mobilize many additional relationships and set up a complex reporting hierarchy. Because at this point in time, the North's overseas arrangements had not yet been systematized, and some work was still in a rather barbaric and primitive stage. What do you think? The first aircraft carrier has not even been launched yet. Many things are not so easy to do even if you want to do them. On the contrary, Bao Xiaomei and her team already have a foundation in Indonesia due to their business connections, so it would be much more convenient and covert for them to do the job. Xiaoyu obviously knew this, so she did not raise any objections. At most, she just said a few words to discuss Chen Chen. Therefore, Chen Chen was too lazy to argue with her and just replied, I know, and I want to make it clear that I am cooperating with the Bao family, not Bao Xiaomei. She's just a spokesperson. Yes, I understand. Hang up. Chen Chen didn't wait for Xiaoyu to answer and hung up the phone with a click. At this moment, the mood that had been a little heavy because of the trump card was about to be revealed suddenly relaxed. He walked out of the room, went to the swimming pool behind the villa, and leaned back on a lounge chair to bask in the sun. But at this moment, a strange sound suddenly came to his ears. The sound of a helicopter's propeller turning. At this moment, Chen Chen's hair stood on end. He knew that his helicopter would never start at this time, and if a helicopter appeared over Mengka, it must be coming for him. Hide! Hi! Everyone evacuate the villa! Chen Chen jumped up from the recliner, stretched out his hand to pick up the Scar H from beside him, turned around and ran out the door, completely ignoring the others who were still in a daze. The sound of the propeller was getting louder and louder. Chen Chen searched the entire sky and finally found a helicopter in the distance. At this time, the helicopter was less than 2 kilometers away from him. Some people always think that helicopters are very loud, so they can be easily spotted on the battlefield even without relying on radar. But if this is really the case, what is the point of helicopter airborne attack? In fact, the sound propagation range of a large military helicopter that has been noise-reduced when flying at low altitude is no more than 3 kilometers, and when flying at full speed, a distance of 3 kilometers can only be covered in 30 to 40 seconds at most. This also takes into account the reaction speed of ground personnel and the time it takes to find the enemy. Once found, it is destroyed. When you see it and hear it, it means you are not far from death. Chen Chen's body could not help but tremble. He raised his gun and tried to aim at the helicopter, but its figure flashed by, and it was impossible to capture it. And in that fleeting glimpse, Chen Chen suddenly saw that there was a bomb hanging on the lower rack of the helicopter. 20 seconds. This is the last chance to escape. But there were other people in the villa, and even family members of the Eastern Corps were around. There was no time to organize their evacuation. Once this bomb was dropped, the entire Dongfeng Corps would be wiped out. Hit it down. It must be taken down. Javelin, Needle 1 for portable missiles have a chance to shoot down this helicopter. Chen Chen turned around and ran towards the villa. But just as he was sprinting at full speed in a panic, several strange noises rang in his ears. Bang! Puff! Chen Chen looked up in shock and saw 2 columns of smoke rushing towards the helicopter. He looked back and saw that the people holding the missiles were Cheng Lei and his gang. Bao Qi also had a javelin in his hand. He had already taken aim and was about to pull the trigger. But Cheng Lei shouted at him and asked him to stop shooting. At the same time, a large number of jamming bombs were dropped from a helicopter flying in the air, and the 2 missiles that flew over lost their target in an instant. Whether it's the javelin or the needle 1, they're all infrared guided. They can't hit at all. Fortunately, the 2 missiles scared the helicopter pilot, and he began to perform a side evasive maneuver. Chen Chen did not hesitate any longer. He rushed to the dock next to the swimming pool and jumped onto the Jianglong assault boat. Li Bang had already loaded the twin anti-aircraft guns with ammunition. Chen Chen jumped into the cockpit and pushed the accelerator. The assault boat suddenly rushed out. Bang, bang, bang. The 23mm anti-aircraft gun spewed out flames, and with the guidance of Cheng Lei, Bao Qi fired another javelin into the sky. It was interfered with again, but immediately afterwards, the needle, 1 in the hand of the co-pilot Zhang Qian, also took action. Passing by, the helicopter made an emergency stop to avoid the oncoming missile, and the nose machine gun opened fire fiercely. At a distance of nearly 1 kilometer, even a 12.7mm heavy machine gun was a bit overwhelmed. However, while the 12.7mm was overwhelmed, the 23mm was like a fish in water. Type 85 23mm anti-aircraft gun, an absolute killer of low-altitude targets. Prior to this, due to the lack of aerial targets, it had been used as a large-caliber machine gun. So much so that everyone has forgotten that this anti-aircraft gun, which is a copy of the Zu-23-2, was used in the Afghan War. The range is 2.5 kilometers and the height is 1.5 kilometers. Perfect coverage of the helicopter in the sky. It was still trying to continue advancing, but what greeted it was a torrential rain of artillery shells. Other firing points also opened fire, including light machine guns, heavy machine guns, rocket launchers, and even damn recoilless guns. For a moment, shells flew across the sky above Manka. The helicopter was strangely suppressed in the air. Chen Chen felt a little stupid. Damn, didn't any of you think of running? That was a helicopter with bombs. However, it was too late to say anything. The situation developed too quickly. Before Chen Chen's assault boat could even stabilize, a 40mm round of ammunition hit the helicopter in the air with epic luck. Actually, it wasn't really luck. After all, within the last 30 seconds, he had fired nearly 40mm rounds. He should have hit it with 1 round, right? Boom! The helicopter burst into flames and fell down in a rotation. As the air was filled with smoke, a thought involuntarily popped up in Chen Chen's mind. What the hell is this called having abundant martial virtues? Me, 8ZT, a fuel transport model, has no other advantages except that it can carry a lot of cargo. Damn it, I can't believe that Zhao Jiaoyang could do such a thing. Is this Hubei or Syria? Even the helicopter bombing tactic has spread here? Looking at the crashed helicopter on the ground from afar and the distinctive uniforms of the 505th Brigade, Chen Chen was completely stunned. Cheng Lei on the side was also confused, but he was not confused about the helicopter itself, but about the Syria that Chen Chen mentioned. Is this also happening in Syria? I thought it was only happening in Afghanistan. That I heard there was? Chen Chen said casually, and then he remembered that at this time, Syria had not yet started fighting. But this is not the point. The point is what they're thinking. They fly a helicopter to bomb us? Do they really think we don't have any air defense capabilities? Hearing his words, Cheng Lei couldn't help but laugh out loud. He said, Captain, are you kidding me? We don't have any air defense capabilities. Look, they installed jammers to completely neutralize the 4 anti-aircraft missiles we captured. In the end, we really didn't hit them at all, right? If we didn't have an anti-aircraft gun that temporarily slowed down the enemy's mobility, it's hard to say whether we could have taken it down. Besides, even if we have anti-aircraft guns, the ones that ultimately do the job are the 40mm and heavy machine guns. Look at this fuselage. The 85mm high pressure can't even hit it with a single round. Li Bang, who was standing beside him, blushed at this, but Chen Chen didn't think there was anything wrong with it. He just nodded slightly and said, this is indeed a problem. The anti-aircraft firepower is too weak. 1 anti-aircraft gun is not enough. We should at least get a few more in the future. Damn, we even had to use a recoilless gun to shoot down a helicopter. It's embarrassing to tell others about it. What's so shameful about this? Looking at Chen Chen's expression, Cheng Lei waved his hand and continued. Use whatever you have. You dare to do it, even under the pressure of the helicopter. Captain, your team is really good. There was no falsehood in the approval in Cheng Lei's eyes. And Chen Chen also knew that what he said was indeed the truth. If the soldiers of the Dongfeng Corps had not risked their lives to use their weapons and suppress the helicopter in a short period of time, the helicopter might have really flown over their heads. By that time, it would be too late to resist. Therefore, the reason why we were able to win this raid was not because of the advantage in equipment, but because of the advantage in people. In this situation, any other team would have been defeated. Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief, looked around, and said to everyone, Great job, guys. Thank you for your hard work. The leader is working harder. Replies came one after another. Chen Chen scratched his head and didn't dare to respond. At this time, the fire near the helicopter, which was not big to begin with, had been extinguished. Chen Chen raised the Scar H without hesitation and led the team a little closer to the wreckage of the helicopter. It is not appropriate to call it wreckage because the helicopter did not disintegrate or burn. Under the effect of the spin, the helicopter's falling speed was greatly slowed down, and at the last moment before hitting the ground, the pilot pulled the total pitch hard, using the speed of the spin in exchange for lift, thus minimizing the damage caused by the crash. Of course, even in this situation, the crew members in the cabin had been seriously injured. From a distance, the driver's car was still moving, but the passenger's head had been bent into an alarmingly sharp angle, and it seemed that there was no way he could survive. Do you want to capture him alive? Shidakai on the side asked. Don't catch it, kill it. Clear. Gunshots rang out, and the driver and co-pilot were all shot. Then, Shidakai made a detour at an angle and shot the other two people in the cabin. There is still one person missing, but there is a high probability that he was thrown out of the cabin, because the entire process from the helicopter smoking to the crash was under the surveillance of the Dongfeng Corps. Chen Chen did see a black shadow being thrown out in midair. Then, don't worry about it anymore. Now just clean up the equipment of this helicopter. Nose machine guns, side door machine guns, no rocket launchers, no machine guns. All unnecessary equipment was removed in order to increase load carrying capacity and maneuverability. The enemy was quite smart. He also knew the problems that a helicopter alone might face, so he adopted the most radical but safest solution. That's good. There's nothing left for us. Chen Chen sighed slightly in disappointment, while Cheng Lei shook his head and said, It's not like there's nothing left. Aren't there still 2 bombs? Captain, can you see what model it is? It's so clear. Chen Chen replied, FAB 250 M62, an old antique iron bomb. This thing is just like our Type 67 grenade. A lot of them were produced during the Cold War, but they couldn't be used at all. Most of them were distributed to the Russians, and a small part was in East Germany. Even the small part left was enough for Russia to fight a local war. This thing is so hard to sell in the international arms market. It has a market, but no price. If you take it to Russia for destruction, you may have to pay extra money. Zhao Jiaoyang's brain is quite good. He actually thought of using something to bomb. Really? If he had dropped these 2 bombs, we would have been completely screwed. There was no water in Chen Chen's words. What is FAB 250? A 250 kilograms bomb. The shock wave of this thing has a radius of 60 meters, and the fragmentation range is up to 400 meters. 2 bombs were dropped, and the villa of the Dongfeng Corps was directly reduced to ashes. There is no other result. It's so fucking cruel that he fired 2 shots at once. But now it's mine. Chen Chen walked forward and first checked the bomb that had fallen off the bracket. Shidakai was startled by his action and subconsciously wanted to stop him, but Chen Chen said indifferently, Don't be afraid. This thing is an old-fashioned bomb. It doesn't use an electronic fuse. It is very safe. It must be manually released with a special tool before it can explode. If it doesn't explode now, it means it's impossible for it to explode. Cheng Lei, come up and see if it can still be used. Hearing his words, Cheng Lei naturally walked forward, squatted down to take a look, and said, These 2 bombs should have been modified. The windmill fuses have been replaced with manual delay fuses. The warhead has an impact fuse, and the safety is not on. It can still be used. The round that fell out is fine, but the one on the rack is not. The shell is flattened. I dare not use it. But this pilot was kind-hearted. He didn't survive, but he managed to save the bomb. That's fine. Chen Chen let out a long sigh and said, In this case, we must return the things he sent us. We are fighting on 2 fronts. In Mingxiu, we have to fight the Burmese army and defeat them. The 505th Brigade found a way to kill Zhao Jiaoyang. Among all the opponents who offended the Dongfeng Corps, Zhao Jiaoyang could be said to be the one who had lived the longest. The reason why he was not dealt with quickly was, on the one hand, because the 505th Brigade itself had a special status and complicated relationships. If a war was blindly declared against him, it would likely cause turmoil in the situation and affect the survival and development of the Dongfeng Corps itself. Of course, the other reason is that before this, he did not offend the Dongfeng Corps hard enough. There has never been a direct conflict between the 2 sides, and the Dongfeng Corps took advantage of the previous problem with the Jianglong assault boat. Therefore, although Chen Chen always regarded Zhao Jiaoyang as a problem that must be solved and never relaxed his vigilance against him, he did not really think about killing him. But now, things are different. He began to take the initiative to attack the Dongfeng Corps, and even use helicopters. Such a big move meant that both sides had torn off their last masks and entered a life-and-death rhythm. But why? Logically speaking, Zhao Jiaoyang shouldn't be so crazy. Chen Chen couldn't understand it, so he simply stopped thinking about it. He summoned all members of the Dongfeng Corps and began to formulate a decapitation plan for Zhao Jiaoyang. Theoretically speaking, the most convenient and quickest way would be to fly a helicopter over and drop a bomb directly on his head. But the problem is that Zhao Jiaoyang is not a fool. After knowing that his helicopter has been shot down and that he has completely lost contact with the crew, it is impossible for him to be completely defenseless. In addition, Dakali itself is an important town, and its air defense capabilities are definitely not comparable to places like Mengka and Jingdong. The risk of a helicopter raid is too high and the success rate is frighteningly low. Even if we take a step back and say that you can fly the helicopter in and avoid the enemy's anti-aircraft firepower, how can you accurately locate Zhao Jiaoyang's position? It is impossible for him to hold up a flag on the street and tell you, I'm here, come and blow me up. Instead, it is possible that he has carefully found a safe shelter to hide in, eliminating any possibility of being attacked. So the key to this problem is how to find him, not how to kill him. Only by finding him and determining his specific location can all subsequent actions become feasible. In the Dongfeng Corps command room, the Corps members gathered together again. After listening to Chen Chen's briefing, everyone fell into deep thought. In the end, it was Sure Dakai who spoke first. We need more intelligence. At least we need to find out where this helicopter came from. Although the Mi-8 is common, it doesn't mean that anyone can buy it or find a pilot for it. Since Zhao Jiaoyang was able to get it, he must have left traces. We need to use these traces to assess how much he paid, and then follow the clues. Maybe we can force him to show up. For example, if his helicopter came from Laos, then it's likely that the crew was from there too, right? So many people died, he must give an explanation to the other side, and this may become our breakthrough point. This helicopter can be used as a bargaining chip in our negotiations, as well as these bodies and 2 bombs. Hearing Sure Dakai's words, Chen Chen nodded slightly. This is indeed a very good idea, but the problem is that this breakthrough is too tortuous and too illusory. There is a possibility that Zhao Jiaoyang will take the bait, but the more likely possibility is that he will simply go all the way to the end, swallow his anger, and cut off his connection with the attack. What? You said they were still wearing the uniforms of the 505th Brigade? The clothes of the 505th Brigade are not anti-counterfeit, so who can't wear them? This can't be used as evidence at all. If it weren't for this, Zhao Jiaoyang would not have allowed these clothes to appear from the beginning. It's an idea, but it's not feasible enough. Chen Chen said, any other ideas? At least we have someone in Dakali. It's really difficult to deal with it in the dark. Let's transfer Jiang He over. Maybe he will have a solution. The person who spoke was Bao Qi. Having worked with Jiang He before, he understood Jiang He's abilities better than most people. So at this time, he subconsciously placed Jiang He as the starting point for solving the problem. But Chen Chen was a little embarrassed about this. Not because Jiang He couldn't go to Dakali, but because what on earth would he do there? Just the task of monitoring Zhao Jiaoyang would never work. Intelligence work is not about opening the whole map, and intelligence personnel don't have a god's perspective. In the absence of basic information support, Jiang He simply couldn't find a breakthrough in a short time, and he might even be exposed because of abnormal actions. Thinking of this, Chen Chen said, we must at least determine the possible location of Zhao Jiaoyang and his possible direction of action, so as to provide Jiang He with a basic entrance. He's an expert, but a good cook cannot cook without rice. It is really too difficult for him to build an intelligence system from scratch in Dakali. What about the little fish? Bao Qi spoke again. Little fish? Chen Chen sighed. If they can participate, what's the problem? Forget about gathering intelligence. Just send a command from the north, find an excuse to invite him to meet, and then kill him in person. Isn't it enough? Isn't the key point still can't participate? Since this bottom line exists, intelligence sharing is impossible. However, Bao Qi's idea did give Chen Chen an idea. Xiaoyu is not okay, but Chasely is okay. Can we use the relationship with Jackal to give Jiang He a basic base for activities? Although the difficulty is still very high, at least after having a foundation, Jiang He's cold start difficulty is much lower. You can try it. Chen nodded silently, and at this moment, the phone he had placed aside suddenly rang. The caller was Peng Shuqing. When Chen Chen heard his voice, he suddenly had a bad feeling. The first sentence Peng Shuqing said directly confirmed his premonition. He said, Shipwreck, I have to tell you something. I know you were attacked today. We provided the helicopter. You provided it? What do you mean? Chen Chen frowned. Wanfeng Group purchased the Mi-8 helicopter, but we did not know that the helicopter would be used against the Dongfeng Corps. In fact, no one could really have imagined it. The contract for purchase and renovation was negotiated a long time ago, but it was only recently delivered. The reason I'm calling you is to tell you that Wanfeng Group and the 505th Brigade have no alliance. We are just doing normal business cooperation. But your cooperation almost killed us all. Chen Chen let out a long sigh, while Peng Shuqing's tone opposite him became somewhat humble. We really didn't expect it to get to this point. We can make up for it. We have information about Zhao Jiaoyang. We can help you kill him. Hearing this, Chen Chen immediately became alert. Kill Zhao Jiaoyang? Admittedly, this is the current trend. As long as Wanfeng Group wants to use the northern Shan state as a base to continue to develop towards the core area of Pubei, it must comply with the decisions of the 7th Brigade and Hua State. But now, they're being too radical. This is not something a businessman should do unless there is a profit motive. Wanfeng Group's base is indeed not in Dakali, but Dakali is indeed an important source of goods for Wanfeng Group. Now, Zhao Jiaoyang has taken advantage of the expansion of the Pamon camp to strengthen his control over Dakali, and has even begun to get things like the Needle, One, and the Javelin. There is no doubt that Wanfeng Group's market position has been challenged. This is the real reason why they completely turned against us. A hint of sneer appeared on Chen Chen's lips. He could vaguely feel that this attack and the helicopter deal mentioned by Peng Shuqing were probably not that simple. Even if he was not aware of it, the real top management of Wanfeng Group was aware of it. Whether they want to harm the Dongfeng Corps is one thing, but whether they have tried is another. However, now is not the time to turn against the Wanfeng Group. The most important thing is to make good use of this opportunity and kill Zhao Jiaoyang first. So he asked, how to do it? We can make an appointment with him and create an opportunity for a face-to-face transaction. What you have to do is take advantage of this transaction to kill him. It comes without any effort. If Wanfeng Group can really get Zhao Jiaoyang out, then killing him would become extremely easy. But there is still a problem. How big the bait must be to make Zhao Jiaoyang take the bait at this time? What's your reason for trading with him? I mean, what are you going to sell him? Equipment. Equipment he absolutely needs. Just tell me what it is. Chen Chen's tone became a little cold, and Peng Shuqing didn't dare to play dumb anymore, but said directly, anti-artillery radar, CRAM, sunken ship. Do you still remember the original anti-artillery radar of the 7th Brigade? We turned it upside down. We can still get it now. After the previous battles you guys had, the entire Pubei already knew about your ability to use artillery. So now, anti-artillery radars are more sought after than anything else. Zhao Zhaoyang wants CRM. We can give it to him. I mean, we won't really give it to him, but we can use this thing to lure him out. How can you guarantee that he will show up in person? Chen Chen continued to ask. We have our own way. In short, you can leave this part to us. We'll give you the time and the place, and you'll just have to kill him. How about that? Is that reasonable? Reasonable, very reasonable. But this is another job that requires taking the blame. You Wanfeng Group has mercenaries. If you want to kill Zhao Zhaoyang, why don't you do it yourself? Isn't it because he is worried that he won't be able to do it and bring himself unnecessary trouble? Sure enough, no matter how close the cooperative relationship is on the surface, when it comes to real risks and interests, no one will call you a brother. Chen Chen thought for a few seconds and replied, okay, that's it. I'll wait for your news. I'll wait for a week at most. Give me a result within a week. No problem. With a click, the phone was hung up. Looking at everyone in the command room, Chen Chen said, the problem has been solved. Wanfeng Group will find Zhao Zhaoyang and give us an opportunity to take action. All we have to do is formulate a decapitation plan and find a way to kill him without fail. I will inform you of the details. The meeting is adjourned now. Bao Qi, Lin He, go to Mengxiu for reconnaissance as planned, and set off today. Clear. Everyone answered in unison and then walked out of the command room one after another. But Shidakai stayed. After the others left, he approached Chen Chen and said, there's something wrong with Wanfeng Group's movements. Our relationship with them has changed. You notice that too? Chen Chen asked back in a low voice. I can see that their role is not much different from ours, but because their main business comes from arms trade and logistics, we didn't have a direct conflict of interest before, so there was no friction. And now, after the establishment of Huamei Company, we have officially joined forces with them. The large-scale bulletproof vest business some time ago was a signal. They probably started to list us as a competitor from that time. In the future, we will have more and more conflicts, and there will be more and more incidents like today. Hearing Sherdakai's words, Chen Chen sighed deeply. He was silent for a long time, and finally said, people say that when you become powerful, you will be surrounded by good people and friends. But why do I feel that the stronger the Dongfeng Corps becomes, the more enemies there are around them? No way, this is Pubei. Shirdakai also sighed. What you said applies to many places, but it certainly doesn't apply to Pubei. Because Pubei is not a place where everyone works together to farm, cook and eat. It is a place where everyone fights for food. There is only so much money, and there is no room for growth in the short term. If we make more, others will have to make less. Those whose food we have taken away will never sit still and wait for death. They will do whatever it takes to get the food back from us. They would even kill us, cut open our stomachs, and take back the blood-stained rice. You actually already knew this a long time ago. You told us that in Pubei, there will be enemies everywhere. Yes. Chen Chen nodded slowly, thought for a few seconds and said, but the good news is that the enemies come one by one, not all at once. We still have time. Let's use Wanfeng Group to get rid of Zhao Zhaoyang first. Then, we can think about how to deal with Wanfeng Group. Once Zhao Zhaoyang dies, Wanfeng Group will definitely develop rapidly in Dakali. We can't just sit back and watch this happen, so we must get ahead of them. Notify Suyu to get ready. The time to grab territory will soon come. Clear. Shirdakai turned and walked out of the room, and Chen Chen sat back in his chair. To be honest, at this moment, he couldn't help feeling a little lonely. He originally thought that even if he and Peng Shuqing were not friends, they could still be partners. But now it seems that it cannot be done. What about the jackal? Chen Chen's mind flashed back to that face that was always cheerful and always noisy. And at that moment, that face unexpectedly appeared in front of him again. The jackal pushed the door open and walked in. He said, one good news and one bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? Bad news first. Chen Chen replied calmly. The bad news is that the shadow troops hide their equipment very well. Now what's the good news? The good news is we can find it too. It's in the well. Jackal, I remember I told you many times that your puns are really bad. Please don't play them again in the future. Chen Chen couldn't help but roll his eyes at the jackal. But he had to admit that the jackal's pun skills had improved. The bad news, he says, is hide it well, and the good news is find that well. Well means both good and well. According to the jackal's description, they found the drone in the well. This usage does make sense. After all, at least from a grammatical point of view, it is no longer a forced usage. It seems that during this period of time, when he had nothing to do, he really watched a lot of American TV series. After seeing Chen Chen's expression, the jackal snorted disdainfully. You just don't want to admit my progress. At least my English is much better than your tactical speaking. Okay, I don't have time to chat with you. Let's get down to business. We got the drone. And guess where we found it? Gili, you already said it. But I mean, in what well? Isn't it just an ordinary well? Of course it's not an ordinary well. Come on. What idiot would hide such important equipment in a well? It's an elevator shaft. Jackal sat down on the chair next to Chen Chen, and then continued. We found a way to search the Shadow Corps' headquarters in Jingdong. It has been thoroughly searched by the Burmese army, but it is clear that they did not find what they were looking for. After our people went in, they used wall-penetrating detection equipment to scan all the walls and floors, because I felt that they could not have reserved a dark room or mezzanine in such an important facility. Then, as expected, we found a not-so-big hidden space 1 floor underground. But we didn't find a way in. We were going to gut the space, but we couldn't start from the ground floor, so we went into the elevator shaft. Guess what? The space under the elevator shaft is directly connected to the dark room. Only when the elevator is on the 3rd floor can you enter the elevator shaft via a rope ladder and go into the tunnel under the steel structure. And at the end of the tunnel is the treasure room we are looking for. There's a security gate there, not a very secure one. We used thermite to burn open the emergency door. We learned that from you. Then we discovered that there were more than just drones in there. What else? Chen Chen immediately became interested, because he knew that if even the basement of the Banglong branch had an RQ-11, then with the arrival of the coaching team, the equipment that would be equipped at the Jingdong headquarters would only be more advanced. There's another security door. Are you kidding me? Chen Chen simply left Jackal speechless. After talking for a long time, he made 2 unfunny jokes and finally only gave himself this answer. To be honest, if the person opposite him was not the Jackal, but his own men, the belt on Chen Chen's waist should have been instantly transferred to his hands. But the Jackal didn't think there was anything wrong with his way of narrating. He just continued to talk. This is a major discovery. The 1st floor is an arsenal, or in other words, a warehouse for commonly used equipment. We found some new guns in there, including the SCAR you seized earlier, as well as the 416 Hong Kong dollars, and the drone you requested. In addition to these, there are many other tactical equipment such as sights, thermal imagers, and so on. These equipments are obviously not only provided for a small team of 20 to 30 people. They have a larger deployment plan. At the same time, the protection level of the 2nd level security door has soared. It even has a self-destruct system. We didn't go deeper, but it is clear that even just from the information we have obtained so far, we can make a judgment. That is, the Shadow Corps is indeed not as simple as we initially thought, and MPRI's operations in Jingdong are not just a superficial mercenary group. Look, isn't this important information? I think this information is more important than any equipment. I can't even argue with you, because it's true. Chen Chen shook his head and continued to ask. So what is your judgment? It's simple. The Shadow Corps is connected to the CIA. What we found was a CIA safe house. Are you sure? Chen Chen's brows frowned instantly. If the fucking CIA safe house is really found in Jingdong, it will be fun. I'm 80% sure. I saw the photos sent back. I feel like apart from the CIA safe house, no other force would build something like this. However, I'm not sure if it has been used. Judging by the wear and tear on the security door, it doesn't look like it has been used very often. So what this means is that this is an outpost that was built in advance. It could be, but it's definitely not now. Why? Chen Chen asked doubtfully. Because the Shadow Corps has been destroyed by you, and Jingdong is about to fall into your hands. Before they renegotiate cooperation with Shan State, they can't activate the safe house again, and they can't continue with their previous plans. So as I reminded you before, the impact of the Shadow Corps' destruction is indeed much greater than we imagined. MPRI will be back soon. They have to take back the safe house no matter what. This time will pass quickly. They may change their identities, but the essence is the same. That's true. Chen Chen nodded slightly, and then he said, but this is not the point. I have too many things to do right now, and I can't take care of things far away. The point is, when can I get my drone? In 1 hour. The Jackal replied. Are you sure? I'm sure the stuff is on the way. How did you transport it out? We have our own pathway. Is it safe? Absolutely safe. Let's make a deal. We'll split the guns and other equipment equally, and the drone will be yours. How about that? Can. Chen Chen answered without hesitation. The Dongfeng Corps is now completely overstocked with light weapons. There is no point in stockpiling too much, so it is better to do a favor to the Jackal. After all, he is the only trustworthy ally at the moment, and if possible, he still hopes that the relationship between the two sides can be closer. Jackal was also quite satisfied with Chen Chen's decisive attitude. He supported himself on the chair and stood up and said, then go out and wait. I want to see how you fly this drone. An hour later, the RQ-11 drone was delivered just as the Jackal had said, and at this time, Chen Chen finally knew what the Jackal meant by their own way. The truck transporting the goods had a UN blue license plate with the words Unamig spray painted on it. Chen Chen never thought that Chai Silly had such a thing in his hands, and he never thought that he would use this relationship for his own affairs. The moment the car drove over, he looked at the Jackal with eyes full of admiration, and the latter raised his head. Although he didn't say anything, the word pride was written all over his body. The stuff has arrived. Shall we fly and take a look now? Looking at the big box unloaded from the car, the Jackal shook his head and asked. Chen Chen walked forward and opened the box. What came into view was indeed an RQ-11 drone that had obviously been used many times and had scratches all over its body. This thing is really big, Chen Chen said with emotion. Isn't this small? This is the smallest drone I have ever seen. Chen Chen chuckled and did not answer. Is the RQ-11 considered small? That means you have never seen the quadcopter drones that became popular later, nor have you seen the tactical drones used for indoor reconnaissance, nor have you seen the micro-reconnaissance helicopters that are smaller than a Dragonfly. But of course, compared to everyone's inherent impression of drones in the current environment, the RQ-11 is indeed not that big. It has a wingspan of 130 centimeters, a length of 109 centimeters, and an empty weight of only 1.9 kilograms. It can be flown with one hand, and its flight time can even reach 90 minutes. In terms of lightness and flexibility, this thing can indeed be regarded as the ceiling of its contemporaries. For Pu Bei and other peasants who have never seen the world, this is a complete dimensionality reduction attack on cognition. No wonder the Jackal said he also wanted to see how it flies, because he had never seen it before. But in reality, the RQ-11 is very simple to operate. The operating system of this drone or the ground station is actually divided into two parts. One part is the flight handle with a joystick and buttons, and the other part is a portable PDA that includes an antenna and image transmission equipment. Chen Chen took out everything one by one, and then connected them to the standard portable power supply. It only took half an hour. After all the preparations were completed, he planned to fly the drone. At this time, all the mercenaries from the Dongfeng Corps gathered around. This was their first time to come into close contact with the legendary high-tech equipment, and curiosity was written all over everyone's face. Chen Chen randomly asked someone to come over and fly the drone. He said, "It's just like throwing a paper airplane. You blow on it and throw it hard, and it goes up into the sky." This sentence was originally a joke, but what he didn't expect was that the boy actually exhaled before throwing it out. The sense of ceremony was heightened, and the RQ-11 rose steadily into the sky. Chen Chen concentrated on operating the joystick, making the big crow fly over everyone's heads within visual distance. The RQ-11 is currently equipped with an ordinary CCD camera, but due to technical and weight limitations, the quality of the image transmission is extremely impressive. When the plane flew to an altitude of about 100 meters, the people below were just blurry shadows as seen on the display screen. Not to mention identifying faces, even identifying the equipment was difficult. This performance disappointed everyone. Even Bao Qi couldn't help but say, "The quality of this thing is too low." I read a report before saying that its image transmission quality is poor, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. What's the point of having a picture like this? If the light is a little darker, you can't even distinguish the figures. Now we need to replace the infrared camera. There's a spare kit in the box which can be replaced directly from the nose. Chen Chen flew the drone out of sight, but the stuck images and sluggish operation immediately made him feel extremely uncomfortable, so he had to fly the plane back. I have to say he is still spoiled. When he started playing with drones in his previous life, this thing had already developed to maturity and was even entering the era of cruise missiles. Even the relatively backward Rainbow 802 has an extremely smooth operation feel. It is nothing like the RQ-11, where you have to predict the signal delay before turning a corner. Chen Chen became more and more uncomfortable as he flew, so he simply put the handle in Bao Qi's hand and let him try to operate it. But unexpectedly, Bao Qi actually has some talent in this area. Although it wasn't particularly smooth and amazing, he flew steadily for his first time. Chen Chen nodded in satisfaction, and then said, "Fly one more circle, and then land." "How do I land?" "I don't know how." Bao Qi's voice sounded a little anxious, while Chen Chen waved his hand and said, "Lower your altitude and fly nearby, then just let it fall. This thing is just a bunch of foam plastic. It wasn't designed to be properly recycled. It won't break." "Is it true? It won't break, will it?" Bao Qi was still hesitating. So Chen Chen simply took the remote control from his hand and showed him what a deep landing was. The entire plane fell to pieces on the ground. Everyone was stunned, but Chen Chen calmly walked forward and picked up all the parts. By the time he walked back to the ground station, the entire plane had been reassembled. "Awesome. You can play it like this?" Bao Qi said with his mouth open in astonishment. "What's so strange about that? The deep landing function is a must for squad-level drones. If they can't land like this, their safety and concealment can't be guaranteed at all." "That makes sense. Speaking of stealth, this thing is really quiet. If you fly high enough, there's really no sound at all." "Captain, can we do something with this, like hang something on it?" "No way," Chen Chen answered decisively. "The RQ-11's payload can only accommodate its reconnaissance equipment. If it carries more, it will crash. But of course, your idea is good. Wait a little longer. I think it won't be long before it can be realized." As he spoke, Chen Chen handed the handle back to Bao Qi, and then said, "Take this with you. It will be useful when you go to Mengxiu for investigation. Remember, you don't have much time. You must become familiar with this thing in the next few days. We didn't have the equipment before, but now we have it. Whether we can easily win the Battle of Mengxiu depends on how well you can use this drone." "Clear," Bao Qi answered solemnly, turned around, and began to study the construction of the ground station. Chen Chen turned his head with a deep gaze and looked towards the south. Next, he has to fight two battles at the same time, and he must win both battles. After flying the drone, Chen Chen and Jackal roughly divided up the remaining equipment. In fact, this batch of guns and sights are not too rare for either the Dongfeng Corps or Chasely, but to be honest, they're valuable. Chen Chen certainly wouldn't care what Jackal did with these things. To him, whether they used them or sold them, it had nothing to do with the Dongfeng Corps. On the contrary, in a sense, if they really sold this thing, it would be a good thing for the Dongfeng Corps, because that meant that Chase Li had inexplicably taken the blame. And if the CIA wanted to investigate in the future, it would have an extra wrong direction. Jackal knew everything about this very well, and when he got the things, he didn't even bother to look at them. He just drove to the entrance of Wanfeng Hotel and went upstairs to find Peng Shuqing. Obviously, he just wanted to ship the goods and didn't want to keep these easily traceable and hot items in his hands. Chen Chen and Hu Lang arrived at Peng Shuqing's office together. Peng Shuqing stood up suddenly, but Chen Chen just waved his hand for him to sit down, and then signaled Hu Lang to talk about his business first. Jackal could tell at a glance that Chen Chen and Peng Shuqing had something going on, so he didn't waste too much time. He just briefly explained his request and left. After the Jackal left, Peng Shuqing immediately stood up again. "Shipwreck. I was planning to go find you myself. But this incident did cause a lot of problems, and the entire group was in a state of chaos. It's been 5 hours since the attack, and we have no idea what's going on." Peng Shuqing's words were indeed true. The incident happened too quickly and too suddenly, so it was normal for Wanfeng Group to not have time to react. It can even be said that they were able to sort out the context and contact Chen Chen to explain the situation in a short period of time after the incident, which was already a high-level performance of Pubei. But the problem is that the premise of applying this evaluation criterion is that they really have no foresight about the result. But what is the reality? The conflict between the Dongfeng Corps and even the Northern Shan Statewide State Interest Group represented by the Dongfeng Corps and the 505th Brigade has been going on for a long time. Wanfeng Group holds such a large intelligence network. Do you dare to say that you have no foresight? If this is true, Wanfeng Group does not need to continue and should just switch to selling fruits. Therefore, after hearing Peng Shuqing's explanation, Chen Chen did not let down his guard. He came here this time to negotiate terms, not to discuss cooperation. However, if you want to negotiate conditions, making others owe you something is actually the most convenient entry point. So, Chen Chen did not respond to Peng Shuqing's question, but asked directly, "How do you plan to ask Zhao Jiaoyang out?" "I can't make an appointment." Peng Shuqing shook his head and replied, "What we can do is confirm the delivery location and make sure he will show up. As for the exact location and time, we cannot specify it. But I think it's enough to be able to determine his exact whereabouts, right?" "Not enough." Chen Chen shook his head and replied, "If you only know where the transaction is to be made an hour before it takes place, then tell me, what is the use of this information?" "Impossible. CRM must be debugged. Zhao Jiaoyang must personally test the effect. As long as he shows up, he will be exposed for more than 2 hours." Peng Shuqing continued firmly, "We can even prolong the debugging time and extend the window period for him to be exposed. We will bear this part of the risk ourselves." After hearing his words, Chen Chen was silent for a few seconds and suddenly said, "It seems that you really want Zhao Jiaoyang to die. But he must die. What are you trying to hide?" Chen Chen's tone was somewhat aggressive, but Peng Shuqing seemed to have expected it and did not show any offended reaction at all. He just sighed calmly and replied, "I know you will have such doubts after something like this happens. That's why we decided to tell you the truth before you figure it out for yourself. That's to avoid giving you the illusion that we're hiding something. As I said, Wanfeng Group is a profit-seeking company. Everything we do is to maximize profits. We sold the helicopter to Zhao Jiaoyang for profit, and now we want to kill him for profit as well. One thing I can guarantee is that in the process of pursuing our own interests, we have never thought of becoming an enemy of the Dongfeng Corps. Ensure? What guarantees do you have? Everyone can make empty promises, but the true attitude can only be seen in practice. And it is obvious that Wanfeng Group has done something wrong. If they want to make up for the consequences of their wrongdoings, they will have to pay a higher price. I don't care if you want to be our enemy." Chen Chen said calmly, "We have too many enemies. It doesn't matter even if there is one more Wanfeng Group. But I want to remind you that the Dongfeng Corps is currently the core of the entire Northern Shan Statewide State Alliance. We have many key threads in our hands which will, to a large extent, determine the final outcome or the final success or failure. If you come out to cause trouble at this critical moment, we don't need to resist ourselves. The Wa State will definitely not let you go." "I see." Peng Shuqing nodded again and said, "That's why I said this was really an accident." "It wasn't an accident, you just messed up." Chen Chen interrupted him rudely, and Peng Shuqing was speechless and could only remain silent. The two of them stared at each other for 2 full minutes. The atmosphere was both awkward and solemn. After a long time, Peng Shuqing finally took the initiative to speak. "No matter what, once Zhao Jiaoyang dies, the conflict between us will be completely resolved, right? There's no need to worry about right or wrong. Then why don't you just kill him yourself?" Chen Chen asked sharp questions that Peng Shuqing had to answer, and the latter's words were choked in his throat before he could finish speaking, even causing Peng Shuqing to cough. "Ahem, ahem. If we can, we will certainly do it ourselves. But the problem is, we can't do that. That's very clear." Chen Chen finally got the answer he wanted. So he leaned back on the sofa and said, "You want to do it, but you can't. Now you hire us to do it for you, right?" Peng Shuqing was confused. "Jackal has always said that you were very good at bargaining. To be honest, I really didn't think so before. But today, I have learned a lesson. Tell me, what do you want? Then I need to know, what can you get after killing Zhao Jiaoyang?" "Not a lot. Those things that Bongxiong cannot control will eventually belong to us. The most important thing is a free market and a free supply chain. The value of these things is immeasurable. If used properly, they can even establish a new force." "You are very frank," Chen Chen praised. "At this point, is there any point in not being honest?" Peng Shuqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I know what you're going to say next. You want half, right? Okay, Wanfeng Group will give you half. To be honest, we can't eat that much. Instead of giving it to others, we might as well give it to you. But if I give it to you, whether you can keep it or not is your own problem. You don't need to worry about this." Chen Chen chuckled and stood up from the sofa. "Then let's have a pleasant cooperation. Give me the information as soon as possible. We can't wait too long." After saying that, he stood up and left. Peng Shuqing, who stayed in the office, looked at his back with complicated eyes for a long time. At the same time, in Dakali, in an inconspicuous residential building, Zhao Jiaoyang sat on the sofa in the narrow living room, eating the ordinary dinner prepared for him by his personal secretary. His adjutant stood beside him with his hands hanging down, reporting the latest situation to him in a low voice. "Based on the current situation, our helicopter has been confirmed to be lost. This incident far exceeded our expectations. According to the original plan, we thought that the enemy's air defense firepower was at most a few portable anti-aircraft missiles and a small-caliber anti-aircraft gun. In this case, the modified Mi-8 is fully capable of advancing to the bombing range and evacuating calmly after dropping the bombs. But we didn't expect that the opponent's reaction speed was almost extremely fast, and their will to resist was also frighteningly high. According to the informant's report, they did not try to escape after discovering the helicopter. Instead, they immediately organized all personnel to intercept and counterattack. Our helicopters came under intensive ground-based fire, including light and heavy machine guns, anti-aircraft guns, rocket launchers, and portable anti-aircraft missiles. The pilot tried to evade, but his luck was very bad. A rocket hit the helicopter's tail, causing the aircraft to crash. Strictly speaking, this is not our problem. The battle plan itself is rigorous and has a very high success rate, but our luck is a bit bad. It's not a matter of luck at all. Zhao Jiaoyang interrupted the adjutant and said, "In Pubei, no team will not run away when they see a helicopter. As long as they run, even if it's only for a minute, our helicopter can play its due role. We lost, but we didn't lose because of the equipment, but because of the people. Those people don't know what fear is. When they see a helicopter, their first reaction is not to run, but to destroy it. This trait is so terrifying that I even suspect that even if they only have rifles, they can shoot down the helicopter when we get close to drop bombs. I don't know how that shipwreck trained such a team. In any case, our loss was not unfair." Zhao Jiaoyang sighed, and his expression became serious. After a pause of a few seconds, he continued, "One failure does not mean that we are in a complete disadvantage. In terms of special operations and decapitation operations, we are indeed not as good as them. But on the front battlefield, they will never be able to compete with us. What we have to do is to push forward all the way. After this period of time, everything will be over." "That's right." The adjutant nodded in agreement, and then echoed, "So no matter how others object, I always say that keeping a low profile for the time being is the right decision. We shouldn't act rashly on the battlefield. We should avoid the enemy's sharp edge and play to our own strengths to win. This is not weakness, but wisdom." Hearing this, Zhao Jiaoyang gave the adjutant an appreciative look. "I was indeed too confident this time. With a helicopter and two 250 kilograms bombs, it should kill anyone. As long as the exact location can be determined, even if it is thrown on Bao Youxiang's head, he will be dead. However, this shipwreck is not dead. Not only is it not dead, it will inevitably launch crazy revenge on itself in the future. I have to say, he was actually really scared. Nonsense. Who the hell wouldn't be afraid of a man like the shipwreck? Chen was dead. The 4 major families of Kokong were killed by him. And even the most difficult to kill Shadow Core was suffocated to death in the cave. Anyone who is targeted by him will die. Therefore, as soon as he learned that the operation had failed, he immediately implemented the backup plan. That is, disappear from everyone's sight. This overly conservative plan was opposed by many people. But Zhao Jiaoyang himself knew that it was the only feasible plan. Don't even mention hiding in a military camp with anti-aircraft firepower. Don't even mention hiding in an impregnable bunker. Even if you run to the moon, as long as the shipwreck knows you are there, he will find a way to hunt you down. The real safety is to make him unable to find it. This is indeed very cowardly. But it's also very smart, isn't it? Not everyone can understand this kind of intelligence, so the adjutant's approval is particularly valuable. Thinking of this, Zhao Jiaoyang said, "I have long said that you have a bright future. Now it seems that your strategic and tactical thinking is indeed far ahead of others. It's better to learn from the superiors." The adjutant smiled sincerely, but then he said, "But we have a problem now. Wanfeng Group has offered us a new supply intention. They have an anti-battery radar, which is very useful to us. They are looking for a buyer and just asked us. I was wondering if we should reach out to them. This is most likely a trap they set to lure the commander out. But maybe we can take advantage of this opportunity. What I mean is that we can use their own tactics against us. The Dongfeng Corps will definitely launch an attack on us. Maybe we can catch them all in one fell swoop." Zhao Jiaoyang's eyes lit up. After hesitating for a few seconds, he said, "You can try." "Understood. I'll do it right away." The adjutant turned into the study and picked up the phone. A series of instructions were issued, and a sinister trap gradually took shape. Chen Chen didn't know that Zhao Jiaoyang was prepared for the impending meeting, but of course, he couldn't put all his eggs in one basket. After repeated consideration, he finally decided to transfer Jiang He to Dakali. Even if he could not determine Zhao Jiaoyang's specific location, he could at least grasp the general movements of the 505th Brigade. In addition, he also sent a team to Dakali for pre-war reconnaissance, led by Lao Zhu, and Jackal contacted Chai Sri to cooperate, responsible for coordinating Jiang He's actions. These two actions put the Dongfeng Corps, which had just been supplemented with 8 people, into the dilemma of a sharp reduction in manpower again. But it must be said that having fewer people also has its advantages. That is, for teams can be accommodated in one helicopter. If they need to carry out air assault operations in the future, they can gain huge advantages in terms of mobility and combat effectiveness. All reconnaissance forces have been dispatched, and Chen Chen is sitting in the center of Munka, waiting for the latest information. But what he didn't expect was that the new information arrived at an astonishing speed. Only in the afternoon of the next day, news came from Peng Shuqing that the deal was done. The delivery of CRAM is scheduled for 2 days later, and the location is a military camp near the airport on the north side of Tachalike. The most important thing is that Zhao Jiaoyang revealed the signal that he would participate in the handover. He revealed to Wanfeng Group that the 505th Brigade will organize a military parade in 2 days, after which the delivery and testing of CRAM can be carried out. Peng Shuqing immediately informed Chen Chen of the details of the handover plan. But the more Chen Chen listened, the more he felt something was wrong, that IT was not because there was anything suspicious about the plan, but to some extent, Zhao Jiaoyang's choice was very correct and reasonable. He was going to organize the 505th Brigade to launch an attack on the 756th Brigade anyway, so it was reasonable to organize a pre-war parade at this time. He already understood the power of the coalition's indirect bombardment, so he needed CRAM badly. He was willing to take risks to obtain this equipment, which was reasonable. He also placed himself in a heavy protective environment, so that even if someone wanted to use this as an opportunity to harm him, they would not be able to do so, which was reasonable. But the problem was that the plan went too smoothly. Every link is very reasonable, and the actions of each party are completely logical. But Pubei is a world without logic. Being logical is the most illogical thing. Chen Chen became more and more vigilant. After confirming that Peng Shuqing did not lie, he immediately issued a new order to the investigation team going to Dakali, which was to find out the specific troop movements of the 505 Brigade, mainly observing the transfer and mobilization between several barracks. This is not a particularly difficult task. Even if you just squat on the street, you can get a general idea. Upon seeing this, Jiang He, who was in charge of the command in Dakali, indeed discovered the problem. Zhao Jiaoyang kept saying that he was going to organize a military-wide parade, and the troops from several camps were indeed moving to the exercise site. But the problem was that the armored company under Zhao Jiaoyang had not moved once from beginning to end. All the armored vehicles were hidden, and even the patrol cars that were active at Lock Wharf were nowhere to be seen. No one knew where they went. But there was no doubt that the disappearance of such key equipment before the war must mean that they had a bigger conspiracy. Based on this judgment, Chen Chen decisively gave up the plan to rely on Wan Feng Group's arrangements to carry out a decapitation operation, and his reason was very simple. The core element of a decapitation operation is the enemy makes mistakes. Now, since the enemy can no longer make mistakes, it is naturally impossible for him to succeed. As a result, the plan that had just been finalized was completely overturned. In the combat command room, facing Chen Chen's decisive and unquestionable attitude, Peng Shuqing was confused and even a little angry. Though we have just finalized the plan and we have arranged everything. One day later, Zhao Jiaoyang will appear according to our agreement. Yes, I know it's difficult to carry out the beheading in their barracks. But you have done this before, right? I believe you can do it. There is nothing you can't do, so that's the problem. Chen Chen interrupted Peng Shuqing and continued. You believe we can do it. So why doesn't Zhao Jiaoyang believe it? Is he dumber than you? More arrogant than you? Or more arrogant than you? Don't be ridiculous. If he really was an ordinary warlord without a brain, he could have attacked us when I was still in Dakali. He thinks deeply and far ahead, so it's incredible that he fell for it so easily. In fact, I did have expectations for your plan at the beginning. I was not betting on Zhao Jiaoyang doing something stupid, but on him making a mistake. For example, if he accepted the CRAM contract but firmly refused to come forward for a trade, that would be reasonable. If this is his first reaction, then we can follow up with a series of steps to gradually relax his vigilance and lure him out. But now, he agreed immediately, as if he was really confident in himself. This is complete nonsense. Zhao Jiaoyang is not that kind of person at all. So, there's no need to try. It's impossible to succeed. But we have already made so much preparation and spent so many resources. Peng Shuqing was still somewhat unwilling. In his opinion, this should be the best opportunity to kill Zhao Jiaoyang. So what? This is a war. Chen Chen shook his head indifferently and continued. When two armies face each other, the commander will formulate countless strategies and consider countless tactics before the battle officially begins. Some of these strategies and tactics will be implemented, and several will even be advanced to the point where they can be completed immediately. But in the end, not even one will be completed. Because what we pursue is victory, not success. A smooth failure will never be as good as a tortuous victory. Understand? After hearing Chen Chen's words, Peng Shuqing opened his mouth, but ultimately said nothing. After a long while, he finally asked, "What about our CRM? Do we still need to give it to them?" "Of course not. Give it to us. But I'm afraid you can't afford it. The price of this system is at least $15 million. The one in the hands of the 7th Brigade was obtained by us from the Kurds in the Middle East, but we sold it to them for $11 million. This set is genuine military surplus supplies, which came from Baghdad Airport after the Americans withdrew. Our offer to the 505th Brigade is $19 million. Neither the 7th Brigade nor the 756th Brigade can spend so much money to buy this equipment because they are not as wealthy as the 505th Brigade. I didn't say buy, I said take." Chen Chen laughed and said kindly, "In the entire Pubei, there are only a few forces that can use the CRAM system. Your market is extremely small. Don't mention the $19 million. If you can't sell it to the 505th Brigade, you'll basically just lose this piece of equipment. So, what you need is stop loss, not profit. Maybe if I wait patiently for a few years, I can sell this thing, but the price will definitely not be the same as today's price. So, I'm willing to bid based on the depreciation amount. We rent, not buy. How about it? Is it reasonable?" "Reasonable." Peng Shuqing finally nodded, and the plan after renegotiation between the two sides was finalized. He will give the CRAM to Chen Chen, but Chen Chen must pay an advance payment. Moreover, it was an advance payment of the full rent, $2 million. Chen Chen paid the money without hesitation, because he knew that this kind of equipment was hard to come by, and no matter what method he used, he would never lose out in the future if he got it in his hands. Equipment is evolving, war is evolving, and the warlords of Pubei are also evolving. It won't be long, especially with his own promotion. Pubei will quickly enter the modern combat environment. I am that catfish, and if the catfish in the school wants to survive, it is better to always stay energetic and always maintain the suppression of the generation gap. The money is in place, and the goods are delivered quickly. On the third day, Chen Chen received the CRAM equipment that he had seen before but was later destroyed in the fire in the 7th Brigade camp. Without any hesitation, Chen Chen immediately delivered the equipment to the Jingdong front line and let the soldiers of the 7th Brigade, who were already familiar with the operation of the equipment, take over the operation. Everything seemed to be going very smoothly. However, the aftereffects of this operation immediately became apparent. The day after the equipment arrived, the 505th Brigade began to block the land freight routes. The Tachalai-Jingdong Highway was completely blocked. Not to mention arms, even daily necessities could no longer be transported to northern Myanmar. This is a major blow. You know, the freight flow of the Dakali defense line accounts for more than 20% of the entire Pubay. Now that it is blocked, only Mungla, Daluo, and Nansan ports are open to traffic. The prices of daily necessities rose accordingly, although the price increase trend was quickly curbed due to the strong supply capacity of a large country to the north. On the other hand, the price of bullets remained high. It is a very simple truth that if the supply of a necessity drops by 20%, then its price does not rise by 20%, but rises until 20% of people can no longer afford this necessity. Bullets are a necessity in Pubay. This was a major test for the entire Shan state. He Bongxiong and he Bupa called Chen Chen almost at the same time, asking him if he could fill this huge gap with the help of his connections in the north, but Chen Chen's answer only disappointed them. The situation is very serious. Zhao Zhaoyang is planning to abandon all his schemes and formally attack us. In the villa hall, Shi Dakai spoke to Chen Chen. Hearing his words, Chen Chen nodded solemnly and replied, "This should be the correct development path of things. Blocking logistics and cutting off the supply chain, the next step should be to move to sanctions." Sanctions? It was obviously the first time that Shi Dakai heard this word from Chen Chen, so he had no idea what it meant. But to put it simply, it prohibits others from doing business with us. For example, they can jointly issue a statement with Myanmar that all groups or individuals who have connections with us or have transactions with us will be investigated and punished. Now more than 40% of the building materials in northern Shan state need to rely on imports from Mongla port, and these imports are controlled by a few trading companies. The Myanmar side can definitely warn them that if they continue to provide building materials to the area controlled by the coalition forces, they will be held accountable later. In this case, some people will definitely be forced to compromise under the pressure of Myanmar because they don't know where the final outcome will go. Our situation will become increasingly difficult, and our financial resources will be stretched further and further. Shi Dakai frowned, and after thinking for a moment, he asked, "What if we go through Wa State and Kokong? Then there's no need to think about it." Chen Chen sighed and explained, "First of all, the Wa State is now unable to take care of itself. Although they can stir up many things, in fact, this force has poor self-sustaining ability. Their dependence on the Mongla port is far more than you can imagine. Once sanctions are imposed, they will be the ones most affected, because relying on the Ming A port in Bangkok alone cannot sustain their huge expenses. As for Kokong, that's pure bullshit. The entire economy there is dependent on casinos and illegal entertainment. The real economy and real trade are horribly poor. Industry and construction are not agriculture. They cannot be adjusted quickly in the short term. If it drags on for a month or two, the coalition sphere of influence will collapse. Indeed, even if the natural gas is cut off, it will be enough for us to bear." Shi Dakai nodded thoughtfully and continued to ask, "So, we really have no other choice? No, we can only take the initiative to seek a breakthrough. And our only chance to break the strategic stalemate is to give others hope. We need to fight." Shi Dakai added, "Yes, we must fight, and we must fight hard." Chen Chen answered firmly, "It's difficult. We already face the problem of insufficient arms inflow and logistical supply difficulties. We also have to create an advantage in a short period of time when we are outnumbered. This is almost an impossible task, right? We still have only one route to take. The Mungla route? That's right. But the Mungla route can't provide us with arms, so civilian products are useless, right? It's easy for us to gain an advantage on a local battlefield with bulletproof vests alone, but how do we fight against a large-scale enemy?" Shi Dakai's tone was full of worry, but Chen Chen was full of confidence. He began, "What we need is nothing more than heavy firepower that can be deployed on a large scale. It's impossible to get the guns, and there's no use for the shells now. But there is one thing that you can definitely get, because this thing is an important export category for listed companies." "What is it?" Shi Dakai asked curiously. "BL-1 a 56mm A-type rain-enhancing and hail-proof rocket." "Rockets? Can this thing be exported?" Chen Chen smiled mysteriously and replied, "Why can't it be exported? HS code 360 for 900000. There are a lot of export examples. Can it be exported? If they cannot be exported, where do you think the nearly 600,000 rain-enhancing rockets produced by the North each year have gone?" Just as Chen Chen had expected, the sanctions initiated by the 505th Brigade and the Myanmar Army were soon implemented, and the entire Shan state fell into an unprecedented predicament. There were no guns or bullets, and even the raw materials needed for industry were greatly restricted. Several homemade weapons arsenals in Shan state were simply unable to maintain production, and the coalition forces were almost in a situation of supply cutoff. Of course, they were not out of ammunition and food. After all, the situation before was mainly confrontation, and the consumption of ammunition was not that large. But the problem is that if this situation continues, the entire coalition will be suffocated to death in less than a month. He Bongxiong and he Bupa were already crazy with anxiety, but the Bao family calmed down at this time. As the last trump card, they have an overwhelming advantage over other forces in terms of troop numbers and weapons and ammunition reserves. For them, the worst that can happen is that the 7th Brigade and the 756th Brigade will withdraw from the battle and surrender. They will then pretend that nothing happened and that it was just a joke on everyone. However, Chen Chen would definitely not allow such a thing to happen. The situation he had worked so hard to build up must not be ruined by such absurd and powerless sanctions. Therefore, after the situation became clear, he immediately summoned all the core members of the Dongfeng Corps and began to formulate a combat plan for the next period of time. Or more accurately, a combat preparation plan. Because the focus of this meeting was not on how to fight, how many troops to use, or what tactics to use, but on equipment. Everyone gathered together in the Dongfeng Corps' combat command room. Looking at the increasingly complicated battle map, Chen Chen's brows furrowed. The situation we are facing now is very clear. The entire battlefield is divided into 4 lines in total. The first line is the Mengxiu line, which is under the charge of the 2nd Regiment of the 7th Brigade. The second line is the Jingdong North and Wampai lines, which are jointly managed by the 7th Brigade and the 756th Brigade. The third line is the Jingdong South and Palau lines that the 756th Brigade is responsible for. The fourth line is the Jingdong West and Mengbin lines that the 756th Brigade Mobile Regiment is responsible for. These 4 fronts complement each other. If one front starts fighting, fighting will inevitably break out on all the other fronts simultaneously. In addition, we are also facing threats from the 505th Brigade in Tachalike, and the Palau line will be under significant pressure. Therefore, in order to stabilize the situation and create opportunities for peace talks, the most important thing for us is to help the Palau line block the attack of the 505th Brigade. In terms of manpower, we don't have it. All we can do is to strengthen our equipment. Suyu, how is the preparation of the second batch of bulletproof vests going? Hearing Chen Chen's question, Suyu immediately stood up and answered. The second batch of 2,000 bulletproof vests has arrived in Mengla and is undergoing customs clearance. It is expected to arrive in Mengyang tomorrow and be delivered to Jingdong the day after tomorrow. According to the plan, 500 of these bulletproof vests will be delivered to the 7th Brigade and 1,500 to the 756th Brigade. Neither party can pay in cash, so we have already negotiated a barter trade contract. The 7th Brigade will pay with ore, and the 756th Brigade will pay with wood. The payment cycle is 12 months. The total purchase contract price is $12 million. The total barter contract price is $16 million. Discounted. No need to report so much. Chen Chen interrupted Suyu and continued to ask. In addition to bulletproof vests, are all kinds of carrying equipment, clothing, shoes, hats, and helmets in place? It has already arrived. Currently, 6,000 units are being cleared in Mongla, and 3,000 units have been shipped to Jingdong. Where are the combat rations? Where are the individual combat food? It has been delivered, and is currently under the unified management of the 756th Brigade. Hearing this, Chen Chen nodded slightly. All the tasks that Suyu had been assigned to do had basically been completed, and the soft power construction of the entire coalition had reached its peak. Theoretically speaking, the lower limit of this team's combat effectiveness has been locked, and there will basically be no more devastating consequences, such as a total defeat in the first confrontation due to insufficient protective equipment and supplies. This provided the Dongfeng Corps with a relatively safe combat environment. At least, Chen Chen didn't have to worry about his house being robbed when he went out. Even if the 756th Brigade is going to be defeated, they will definitely be able to hold on for a while. During this period of time, the Dongfeng Corps had room to maneuver whether to help or retreat. But this alone is not enough, because what Chen Chen needs is to completely defeat the 505th Brigade. So, after a little thought, he immediately put forward his new order. You did a good job before, but now the situation has changed. Under the severe sanctions, we can't delay the war any further. We have to launch the fight in the shortest possible time, and by the shortest possible time, I mean 2 weeks. We must complete a new round of equipment replenishment plan within these 2 weeks. So, this is what you need to do. First, according to the information I provided you, send a price inquiry letter to a company called Sinuguka in the north and purchase a batch of civilian rainmaking rockets from them. We don't have to haggle over the price. As long as they ship the goods, we'll take whatever they order. The climate in the north is humid this year, with heavy rainstorms in various places. The sales of rainmaking equipment are seriously unsatisfactory. They urgently need to digest the excess production capacity and deal with the backlog of products. This is our chance. You must seize it. According to the results of previous research, the price of a rain-enhancing rocket is about 2,000 to 3,000 renminbi, which is $300 to $400 in US dollars. Let's place an order for 10,000 rounds first. They should have them, because their annual production capacity is close to 100,000 rounds, so it's impossible that they can't produce this much. Of course, if they're not enough, there are 2 other companies, Zhongtian Rocket and Zian Xinhua, that also sell similar products. However, the latter 2 companies have no export records, so it may be a little more difficult to negotiate. You have to find a way to get it done. Clear. So you nodded immediately, and Chen Chen continued speaking. After we get the rockets, we still need to modify the rocket warheads. In fact, this is not difficult. All we need to do is replace the silver iodide in the shells with ANFO, RDX, or picric acid. The 7th Brigade and the 756th Brigade should have a lot of RDX in stock. If it's not enough, find a way to get me some concentrated sulfuric acid and nitric acid, and we'll arrange for people to rub it manually. Of course, this is the last resort, and we need to evaluate its feasibility before taking action. If you really can't do it, get 2 compression granulators and make compressed black powder. How is it? Is there any difficulty? No, everything can be solved. So you shook his head and continued. Let alone the 2 brigades of RDX, we have quite a bit in Huame Company's warehouse. I predicted that once the war started, explosives would be in great demand, so I stockpiled a large amount, including picric acid, RDX, various types of nitropropellants, and a small amount of CL-20. Chen Chen looked at Suyu in surprise and asked in disbelief. You have CL-20? Where did you get it from? There are very few. I don't know where they come from. I just happened to see them in the market and bought them. The market you were talking about is not the open market, right? Of course not. It's the internal market. That's all right. Chen Chen nodded slightly. and there was a hint of approval in his eyes when he looked at Suyu. I'll leave all the equipment procurement to you. Do you have any other difficulties? Hearing this, Suyu hesitated for a moment, then replied, we need a lot of transportation capacity, but Wanfeng Group refused to provide additional capacity. They have good reasons. Not because of the imaginary sanctions, but because they have a large base in Tachalike. If they cooperate with us here, they will be beaten over there. I don't know what to do. If I look for other transport capacity, the cost and efficiency cannot be fully guaranteed. As he finished speaking, Chen Chen frowned. He never expected that Wanfeng Group would do this at this critical juncture. Indeed, their reasons are sound and reasonable. However, when it's time to take sides, you shouldn't consider whether the fucking reasons are reasonable or not. If loyalty is not absolute, it is absolutely disloyal. Thinking of this, Chen Chen said, I'll go talk to him. What about other issues? No further questions. I promise to prepare all the equipment before the battle begins. But the transformation will require the cooperation of the 7th Brigade and the 756th Brigade. They will cooperate, Chen Chen said slowly. He then announced the end of the meeting, stood up, and walked out the door. Half an hour later, he met Peng Shuqing in the reception room on the 6th floor of Wanfeng Hotel. The latter looked a little uneasy, but he still maintained basic composure. Why do you refuse to provide us with logistic services? Are you not going to accept business even if it comes to you? Chen Chen spoke directly, while Peng Shuqing paused for several seconds before finally answering. Shipwreck, I have already explained this issue to Suyu. Our base is in Dakali. If it was the previous confrontation, it would be fine, but now the 505th Brigade has actually declared war on the coalition forces. We cannot risk providing you with any more help, as that could put Wanfeng Group in an irreparable predicament. You should understand us when it comes to business. In fact, we are now regretting handing over the CRAM to you, because we did not expect the 505th Brigade to react so strongly. If we were not on your side, we would even consider taking the equipment back. But did you see that we have spoken? This is our sincerity. Your sincerity is to refuse to provide services to us after monopolizing the logistics of most of Shan State? We're not saying no, we just can't do it. Peng Shuqing's tone was somewhat helpless. After sighing, he continued, do you think we are not afraid of death? To be honest, under the current circumstances, even if you lead the Dongfeng Corps to destroy the Wanfeng Group, I would not be surprised. You have the ability and the motivation. But we still have to cut off contact with you, because the base of Dakali is more important than Munka. Sunk, I hope you can understand me. This is a last resort, you're lying. Chen Chen interrupted him without hesitation and said, as long as you fully cooperate with us, after we take over Dakali, you will get back everything you lost, and even earn more. You are a group of businessmen, and what you pursue is profit. I don't believe that you can't understand even this most basic truth. What you said makes sense. Peng Shuqing raised his head, looked directly at Chen Chen, and said, but the premise of all this is that you can really kill the 505th Brigade and Zhao Jiaoyang. But you gave up your best chance, didn't you? After this, how else can you kill him? I really can't think of any other feasible methods besides decapitation warfare. Maybe I don't understand military affairs. But I don't understand. It's impossible that all the top leaders don't understand. They also fought through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. No need to talk nonsense. So there is no room for negotiation? Chen Chen interrupted again. There's really no room for negotiation. If you want us to take risks and work with you, at least you have to show us the value. And now, tell me where's the value? Then there's nothing to say. Chen Chen said no more nonsense and turned to leave. From this moment on, he knew that Wanfeng Group was no longer a friend. Looking at Chen Chen's back, Peng Shuqing felt mixed emotions. He sat alone in the reception room for half an hour without saying a word or making any movement. Of course, he could think of what Chen Chen could think of. However, this is really not something he can decide. To put it bluntly, he is just a messenger. Peng Shuqing sighed heavily, and at this moment, someone walked out of the room behind the reception room. The man patted him on the shoulder and said, you did a good job and expressed yourself firmly. It's all over now. They have been cut off from all support, and the Wa State will not intervene directly. This chaos, or farce, ends here. Hearing this, Peng Shuqing nodded slightly. He seemed to agree, but after a few seconds of silence, he asked again, can it really be over? Boss, do you really think the Dongfeng Corps can't handle it? They can't bear it. A hint of mocking smile appeared on the man's face, and then he continued, you all overestimate this so-called Dongfeng Corps, this sinking ship. We have already found out that they have no official background at all. Yes, they have some cooperation with the North, but it is purely commercial cooperation. No one will stand up for them, and no one will provide them with support outside the rules. So, they will definitely lose this time. With such a small number of people and equipment, they want to attack the 505th Brigade and challenge the order in Pubei. What are they thinking? With less than 4,000 people, he wants to take Jingdong. Are you kidding me? Who does he think he is? Don't worry, he can't do it. We just need to choose the direction with the highest probability of winning, because it is definitely impossible. Boom! There was a sudden loud bang, and the man's words were interrupted abruptly. He clearly felt a vibration under his feet, and then, intensive gunfire rang out. The man's eyes were bloodshot. He had guessed what was happening. Dongfeng Corps sinks the ship. You are so fucking bold. At the same time, on the first floor of Wanfeng Hotel, all members of the Dongfeng Corps had completed their assembly within half an hour. Now a Mingshi and a Predator were blocking the main entrance of the hotel, and the entire street had been blocked by machine gun pickups and F-150s. What's even more exaggerated is that the Mi-171SH has also taken off, with the rocket tanks that had just been replenished aimed at the streets below. It seems that as long as there is any movement, the rockets inside will pour out and flatten all moving targets. On this small street, near this not-so-tall building, the firepower deployed by the Dongfeng Corps was so abundant that it not only overflowed but even exploded. There really was no one who dared to offer any resistance in this situation. Under the continuous shouting offensive, all the Wood Ghost mercenaries on the periphery had laid down their weapons and withdrawn from the streets, while the remaining Corps elites retreated into the building, as if they wanted to make a final attempt. Chen Chen stood at the gate of Wanfeng Hotel, holding 416 Hong Kong dollars, patiently waiting for the evacuation of individual customers in the casino hall on the first floor. Li Bang stood beside him, holding an one in his hand, and fired smoke bombs continuously into the hall from the side of the gate in a standard angle cutting action. In just 30 seconds, the first floor of the entire hotel was completely covered by smoke. Afterwards, he dropped the one and replaced it with the AA-12 on his back. He made a forward gesture to Chen Chen and stepped into the hotel. Behind him, the entire assault team put on gas masks and switched their 4-eye night vision goggles to thermal imaging mode. With the help of perspective, all moving targets were clearly visible, and according to Chen Chen's orders, all targets that did not lie down as required were knocked down and then shot again. After just a dozen seconds, the entire first floor hall fell into the control of the Dongfeng Corps. After patrolling for a week, Chen Chen led the team to the elevator on the side of the hotel and the stairs connecting the first and second floors. He only gave a look, and Li Bang immediately threw stun grenades and smoke bombs at the stairs, and then used his own body as a shield and stepped onto the stairs without hesitation. Chen Chen followed closely behind him and climbed up with other members of the assault team, holding their guns. They still did not encounter any resistance, but the elevator, which had not yet had time to cut off the power, descended from the upper floors. Then, amid a series of scolding, orders, and violent gunfire, they were suppressed on the first floor by the control team. The attack was smooth, and after reaching the second floor, Li Bang's shotgun swept across the entire corridor, knocking down 2 Wood Ghost mercenaries who were setting up their guns in the corner. Then, he immediately turned the muzzle of his gun and walked towards Chen Chen, and they began to search forward along the corridor back to back. The other teams that had already undergone CQB training also searched according to Chen Chen and Li Bang's standard actions. Half a minute later, the second floor was cleared again. There was no one in Peng Shuqing's office, and Chen Chen was not surprised by this result. He still maintained the rhythm of the attack, only took a short rest at the corner of the stairs, and then continued to command the team to attack. This time, the team serving as the vanguard was replaced by 2 groups, while he and Li Bang retreated to the back. The third floor is still simple, and so are the fourth and fifth floors. Although it was not empty, there was very little resistance. This definitely did not match the number of personnel that Chen Chen had previously judged. It was obvious that Peng Shuqing, or the person in charge, had arranged most of the manpower above the 5th floor. Starting from the 5th floor, the entire floor is filled with conference rooms, entertainment rooms, and gyms. The terrain is more open, and the difficulty of CQB operations increases sharply. This scene was almost identical to the CQB defense that Chen Chen organized when he was reborn, except that the attackers and defenders had switched positions. Chen Chen keenly realized that his team had shown signs of slacking off, so he decisively ordered the assault team to stop the attack and all team members to do only one thing, which was to block all exits leading downward and outward. Next, it was time for the helicopter to appear. It didn't take off for no reason. The 12.7mm machine gun swept across all 3 floors of the top floor starting from the 8th floor. At the same time, rockets were fired rhythmically and accurately through the windows. Boom! 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 The shocking explosions continued, and the glass of the entire hotel began to collapse. Chen Chen had no intention of attacking the upstairs. He just wanted to block these people upstairs and then blow them to death one by one. CQB? Bullshit! Peng Shuqing is still inside. Chen Chen doesn't know whether he can survive. It is a pity. Chen Chen knew that he had no choice, but he chose the wrong boss and stood on the wrong side. He actually had a chance, but he didn't dare to choose. Thinking of this, Chen Chen couldn't help but sigh, and at this moment he suddenly heard a loud but calm shout. Surrender! We surrender! Stop fighting! We surrender! We have all laid down our weapons! Chen Chen's spirits lifted. This was definitely not Peng Shuqing's voice. The only person who could surrender at this time and clearly have control over the situation could only be a bigger boss, a bigger fish. Cease fire! Chen Chen calmly gave the order, and the Mi-171sh immediately began to move up, away from the dangerous area without fire cover. Put down your weapons, take off your clothes, and come out one by one. Chen Chen shouted loudly, and a moment later, the first naked man appeared in front of everyone at the staircase from the 6th floor to the 5th floor. His face was covered in blood and dust, and even his hair was blown into a mess by the shock wave of the explosion. His expression was extremely depressed. It was obvious that the previous wave of air strikes had completely destroyed his will to resist. Chen Chen did not shoot. He let the man go as agreed. And then one figure after another walked out from the stairs. Chen Chen saw Peng Shuqing, and behind him was a man still in a suit. His clothes were a little wrinkled, but he looked very handsome. Even though all the guns were pointed at him, he still remained calm. Shipwreck, you can't kill me. We can trade, it was just a misunderstanding. We had no choice, Bang! Chen Chen pulled the trigger. The 5.56mm bullet passed through the man's head without any obstruction. Like most of Chen Chen's enemies, he died without finishing what he wanted to say. Peng Shuqing on the side was stunned. He looked at Chen Chen and asked in a trembling voice, "Why did you kill him? Do you know who he is? Do you know that if he dies, the entire Wanfeng group will?" Peng Shuqing suddenly stopped, because he just figured out something. What will happen to Wanfeng group? What does it have to do with the shipwreck? It was originally impossible for the two parties to cooperate, and Wanfeng Group would no longer provide any help to the Dongfeng Corps. He was here to kill people, so what else was there to say? So Peng Shuqing really shut up? However, Chen Chen walked up to him and said, "No matter how you explain, the planes were provided by you to the 505th Brigade. Then it is obvious that our specific location information was also provided by you. The 505th Brigade has an informant in Munka, right here with you. Find him out, and you become the boss of Wanfeng Group. I will help you get rid of anyone who opposes you one by one. But if you can't find it, you'll die too." In fact, Chen Chen really started to suspect that there was something fishy going on with Munka or Wanfeng Group very early on, because there were several times when Chen Chen felt that his actions were guessed by others. From the spread of the news of going to Kokong, to the advanced prediction of Bonglong's fight with the Shadow Corps, to the recent helicopter raid, Chen Chen found it hard to believe that without accurate intelligence, Zhao Jiaoyang would dare to send a helicopter to fly over directly and try to blow him to death at all costs. Think about it. Is this reasonable? The Dongfeng Corps is operating in Munka, but the Dongfeng Corps' villa, office, and training base are in 3 different locations. You only have 2 bombs. So how can you ensure that you can kill the key targets? Aerial bombs are not nuclear bombs. You can't just throw one and forget about it. He was almost certain that someone was monitoring the Dongfeng Corps, and it was even possible that they were monitoring it in real time and continuously providing information support to the 505th Brigade. Therefore, his plans during this period were complex, changeable, and unpredictable. The development of events also verified his idea. The reaction speed of the 505th Brigade was so fast that it was as if they were holding a monitor to monitor the Eastern Corps' every move. Later, the news that Wanfeng Group had terminated cooperation made Chen Chen's heart go on alarm bells. What the hell is this? Why are you doing this to me? Don't even mention considering commercial interests. If you really consider commercial interests, you should at least not help either side. Therefore, Chen Chen launched an assault on Wanfeng Group without hesitation. In fact, the entire plan was completed the moment he turned around after he finished talking with Peng Shuqing. In the next half hour, he did not waste a single second and spent all of it on organizing his forces and arranging battle plans. This tactic of like a mountain pressing down on one's head or a lion attacking a rabbit achieved amazing results. The Dongfeng Corps did not suffer any casualties, and even the consumption of ammunition was not that great. Only 9 rockets were fired. If we have to talk about the high cost, it was probably because more smoke bombs were thrown. However, the smoke caused by the smoke bombs dissipated quickly, and what was left was the ruined Wanfeng Hotel building. Sitting back in Peng Shuqing's office, Chen Chen and Peng Shuqing's positions had changed. Chen Chen sat on the sofa, while Peng Shuqing knelt on the ground. This was certainly not because Chen Chen liked people to kneel down to him, but because Peng Shuqing's hands were tied behind his back, and kneeling was already the most comfortable position for him. Looking at Peng Shuqing, who had a dejected look on his face but a hint of expectation in his eyes, Chen Chen asked, "Who was that man just now? What is his position in Wanfeng Group?" Peng Shuqing did not hesitate and answered directly. He was a senior officer of the Thai Allied Forces. I don't know his specific rank, but he was at least a regimental commander. His name is Zarin. He's one of the 3 bosses of Wanfeng Group and the biggest boss. He was originally in charge of the Wood Ghost Mercenary Group and the arms trade, and only recently began to take over logistics. His first decision was to terminate the logistics cooperation with the Dongfeng Corps. Unexpectedly. I didn't expect that you would kill me before it even officially started. Peng Shuqing didn't finish his words, but Chen Chen had already guessed what he wanted to say. He nodded slightly, expressing his satisfaction with Peng Shuqing's cooperative attitude. Then he continued to ask, "You just said that this person's death would have a significant impact on Wanfeng Group. What is the specific influence? What relationship does he have with you that is irreplaceable?" "Got a lot. Mainly the network of people centered around him." Peng Shuqing slightly twisted his tied arms. Chen Chen noticed his movements and asked Li Bang to untie him. The latter breathed a sigh of relief, stretched his sore and numb arms, and replied while still kneeling on the ground. "You also know that the Thai Allied Forces were originally Kinsa's team, just like Nua Kong before and Xian Ruanlong now. Even if you were a drug lord, if you want to stay in Pubei for a long time, you still need to manage a lot of things." After Kinsa died, Zaylin took over his connections. Some of them were lost, but they were still basically intact. This network of relationships spans the entire Golden Triangle and even reaches many countries overseas, such as the Middle East, Africa, and South America. It can be said that Wanfeng Group was built on this network of relationships, and the core of the network is Zaylin. Most people only recognize him, and I think it's unlikely to replace him in the short term. "It doesn't matter." Chen Chen shook his head and replied, "Stand on our side. After you kill Zhao Jiaoyang, everyone will recognize you." "That really? How what?" "Yes, of course." Peng Shuqing answered quickly, but then said, "However, if I replace him, it means that the original order will be completely disrupted. This process will not be fast or smooth. You guys, it doesn't matter." Chen Chen shook his head again. "You always have to take it one step at a time. We have the military force, we have the background, we have the trade routes. Now, all we're lacking is logistics. As long as you can take over the logistics business, I guarantee that our development speed will be much faster than you expect. Have you been planning this day for a long time?" Peng Shuqing looked at Chen Chen with admiration, but also fear. He felt that he really couldn't see through the man in front of him. When did Chen Chuan start planning to swallow up Wanfeng Group? When he incorporated Huamei Commercial Bank? When he bought Paramount Predator? Or when they first met? He walked through the lobby of Wanfeng Hotel Casino with 3 men and 4 guns without fear. At that time, they only had a few tattered guns in their hands, and no one would even look at them when they walked on the streets of Munka. Who could have thought that in less than 2 years, they would grow into a behemoth that scares everyone? Looking at Peng Shuqing's expression, Chen Chen shook his head and replied, I have never actually thought about swallowing up Wanfeng Group. I've always thought about cooperation. You guys forced me to do this. I can't do anything about it. You're right. Peng Shuqing nodded slowly, then asked, so what's next? A letter of surrender? Yes, a letter of surrender. Zarin controls the Wood Ghost Mercenary Group. It's impossible that he doesn't have any trusted followers, right? Even in Munka, there should be quite a few of them. Kill these people. I won't provide you with any help, and I don't care how big a fuss you make. I just want to see the final result. By the way, after you're done with this, your hands will be stained with blood. I see. Peng Shuqing answered solemnly. Chen Chen stood up, pointed to the seat beside him, and said, sit down. This is still your place. After giving the order to Peng Shuqing, Chen Chen no longer paid any attention to him. However, Peng Shuqing's actions did not disappoint Chen Chen at all. After Chen Chen left, Peng Shuqing immediately started his own action. With the help of the power of the Dongfeng Corps, he organized a group of private soldiers in a very short time. He gained the loyalty of these people by means that Chen Chen did not understand and was too lazy to understand. Then he began to purge the entire Wanfeng Group. The Mu Gue Mercenary Group was the first target of the purge. Several elite teams standing on Zarin's side were dealt with first. Anyone who showed any intention of resistance was killed directly by Peng Shuqing. The team of more than 40 people was reduced to only a dozen or so, and these dozen or so people were really mercenaries without any stance. Soon after, the scope of the purge began to expand, and all of Mugue's nearly 400 mercenaries stationed in Munka were screened, and even some small mercenary groups that were outsourced and registered were not spared. However, at this stage, the number of deaths began to decrease. Among the 400 people, only 6 diehards were killed, and the rest all readily stood by Peng Shuqing's side. The bloody storm in Munka soon ended. Compared with what Chen Yimin had done before, Peng Shuqing's efficiency was higher and his methods were more precise and beautiful. However, this is not the final result. At this point, Peng Shuqing only controlled the Wooden Ghost Corps. In the entire Wanfeng Group, he has already mastered relatively powerful armed forces. But if the scope is expanded further, in various departments of the Wanfeng Group, there are still many leaders who hold real power and have not made clear statements. There is no way. Wanfeng Group is too big. After a round of investigation of hotels, casinos, businesses, logistics, chicken shops, restaurants, and even construction companies, it was found that there were 19 bosses of all sizes in Munka and surrounding areas alone. These people have a large amount of resources in their hands and also control scattered armed forces. The biggest one among them is Bahan, who is in charge of casinos and hotels. This person is in Munka, at the Wanfeng Hotel. In the first round of raids, he was not killed by the Dongfeng Corps but quickly hid in the Vientiane Hotel, trying to seek shelter from the 7th Brigade. But the question is, how could the 7th Brigade give him shelter? So he was handed over again, and after asking for instructions from Chen Chen, he was personally escorted to Peng Shuqing by He Bupa's personal soldiers. Peng Shuqing did not resort to brutal means of killing, but untied him and set up a table at the Vientiane Hotel to entertain Bahan. He walked into the private room with Bahan, and after guiding Bahan to his seat, the first words he said made the latter's hair stand on end. He said, Bahan, the place you were sitting now is where Chen Chen used to sit. Upon hearing this, Bahan jumped up like a spring, while Peng Shuqing waved his hand and continued, don't be so nervous, I don't mean anything else. I am sitting in Chen Yimin's seat now. I just want to tell you that Chen Yimin and Chen Chen are both dead, but we are still alive. If you don't want to follow their old path, don't do their stupid things. Do you understand what I mean? Bahan looked at Peng Shuqing with a distorted expression. After a long while, he finally answered, I see. But the Dongfeng Corps has done such a ruthless thing, it will be hard for us to convince the people if we join them now. They did it to the extreme? Peng Shuqing smiled. When Zarin planned to kill the shipwreck, we didn't say that Zarin was ruthless. There is no difference between the two of them, except that one uses conspiracy and trickery, and the other uses machine guns and cannons. Just tell me, do you prefer using guns or using schemes and intrigues? Bahan did not answer immediately, but in fact his silence already showed his attitude. Peng Shuqing nodded with satisfaction. He knew that his threat had worked. So next, if you want to cooperate, you can't be too hard-nosed. So he said in a persuasive way, Bahan, it's not easy for you to get to this position, and I also know that you are actually a smart person. If you're not smart, you won't stay out of what's going on before. Zarin has come to you many times, right? He has come to me many times, too. Our choices are the same. I have no choice but to do some things, but I definitely did not take the initiative to stand on Zarin's side. What about you? You only care about making money, and you won't agree to anything anyone asks you to do. That's why I'm alive, and that's why you're alive. In this case, why don't we implement this principle to the end? The Dongfeng Corps is very fierce and evil, but they are very reasonable. Only if we have a reasonable big brother can we have a chance to make money, right? These words finally moved Bahan. After a long silence, he suddenly said, Jilong Club and Changfeng Commercial Bank, these two must be destroyed. In Chun, Guachangfeng, they must die. Old Prung, you have to think clearly about what to do. Taking over the Wood Ghost Corps is not about disturbing everyone's foundation. You can play your own games and fight your own battles. No one will care. But if you want to get rid of other veterans in the company, that's another matter. It's going to be very troublesome, and it's going to be very turbulent. It doesn't matter. Peng Shuqing breathed a sigh of relief, then said, not everyone is going to die. On the other hand, I'm not trying to steal everyone's things. Did you see what I stole from you? The casino and the hotel are still yours. All I want is an attitude. For example, you mention an Chun and Guo Changfeng. That's a very good attitude. But it's not enough. There is no need to keep the security guards under you. From now on, the Wood Ghost Corps will be responsible for security operations. Does that make sense? Do I have a choice? Yes, I have. Peng Shuqing smiled. Go and kill the two people you mentioned. I'll leave the letter of surrender to you. Then, I'll go to the Dongfeng Corps to prepare a case for you. From now on, you will have the shared use rights of the Wood Ghost Corps. How about that? You want to dismantle the wooden ghost? Bahan was stunned. That's right. There's no need for this thing to exist anymore. From today on, there can only be one top mercenary group in Myanmar, and that is the Dongfeng Group. In the next few days, Peng Shuqing launched a real bloody storm. Not only in Myanmar, but also in the entire Wanfeng Group's control area in northern Shan State. It is unknown how many powerful people have been purged, and how many people have handed in their letters of allegiance. The most serious internal strife in the history of Wanfeng Group occurred. In such a fierce conflict, most of the Wood Ghost Corps' manpower was consumed. Gunfights broke out everywhere in the streets of Myanmar. People were strictly prohibited from going out, and the entire town was almost at a standstill. 3 days later, the affairs in Myanmar City were basically settled, and life returned to normal. Ordinary people who had been locked up for 3 days did not actually notice many changes. Except for a few collapsed buildings, this small town was actually no different from before. But in reality, everything has changed. The Wood Ghost Corps had a team of more than 400 people, but was reduced to less than 150 people. These 150 people were regrouped by Peng Shuqing and formed into an execution squad. The only 2 remaining executives who were unwilling to take sides were eliminated by Peng Shuqing, who personally led the team to Bangkok and completed the final cleaning up the house with Bao Xiaomei's permission. Afterwards, he rushed back to Myanmar without stopping. In the villa of the Dongfeng Corps, Chen Chen saw Peng Shuqing, who was dusty, covered in blood, and smelled of gunpowder. The latter took out a pistol from his waist, placed it in front of Chen Chen, and then said, "From today on, there will be no more wooden ghosts." I gave it a new name, Huamei Commercial Bank, Security Department. This series of actions by Peng Shuqing really caught Chen Chen off guard. He did think that Peng Shuqing would definitely do something big as a token of his loyalty, but he really didn't expect that Peng Shuqing would make it so big. Wow, you haven't even officially got the position, but you've already started learning the working style of the staff? Progress. Too much progress. As a result, the so-called sanctions order issued by the 505th Brigade and the Myanmar side suddenly became a piece of waste paper. Nonsense. If you sanction me, the worst that will happen is that my business will be difficult. At this critical juncture, if they go against the Dongfeng Corps, they really dare to kill people. For a time, except for the trade route from Tachalike to Kingtung, which was still blocked, the economic vitality of northern Shan State was restored. Even Ibupa and Ibangxiong did not expect that the problem could be solved in this way. After ensuring internal stability, they were completely dumbfounded. Because they know that although Chen Chen's series of actions may seem rough, they are actually delicate. He did not directly confront the Myanmar side. You impose your sanctions, and I buy mine. Is there a conflict? There is no conflict. Even if there is a reckoning later, when it comes to the final negotiations, the Burmese will not be able to use this matter as an issue. As for Zhao Jiaoyang, well, a dead man, there is no need to think too much about him. Of course, they have confidence in the Dongfeng Corps, but it does not mean that everyone has confidence. Among those who had no faith was a little fish. The matter of Wanfeng Group had just been settled when Xiaoyu called. After Chen Chen answered the phone, Xiaoyu's first words were, "Do you really want to be Xiangyang Pubei? Are you willing to break all the rules?" This sentence made Chen Chen stunned. After a long pause, he finally answered, "The problem is that I didn't do this. It was Peng Shuqing who did it." "Do you dare to say that Peng Shuqing did this without your influence?" "Really not." Chen Chen sighed helplessly and continued, "We must resolve the Wanfeng Group's issues. If they don't want to be our friends, then they will inevitably become our enemies. Rather than waiting for them to really cause trouble and then dealing with it, it is better to nip the danger in the bud. To be honest, I just wanted to kill a chicken to scare the monkeys. Who the hell could have thought that Peng Shuqing would kill all the monkeys?" After hearing his words, the little fish on the opposite side was speechless. "You say you want to blame him, but how can you blame him? He didn't do anything bad. In fact, in a sense, it is in his own interest to completely break the monopoly of Wanfeng Group and clean up all the crimes of Wanfeng Group. But if you say you don't blame him, it's because the way he acts is really too radical. In 4 days, more than 400 people died in the Wanfeng Group's interest network. This is not a war. Not to mention placing it in Pubei. Even if it were placed in other more turbulent places, it would be a very explosive existence. What's more important is that Wanfeng Group is a very influential group in the entire Pubei and even in the entire Southeast Asia. Once this incident happened, the entire public opinion had to pay attention. Now, some people in the West have suspected that Pubei is committing genocide and anti-humanitarian massacre. As the mastermind behind the scenes, the Dongfeng Corps certainly couldn't hide. The reputation of this organization, including Chen Chen, was also declining and even had many scary nicknames. Thinking of this, Xiaoyu said, "Sinking ship. Do you know what those Western media call you now?" "What's your name?" Chen Chen asked doubtfully. "Pubei Meat Grinder. Monka Butcher. Daganzawa of Asia. Do you know how troublesome these names are for you? You may never be able to wash off the marks on your body in your entire life." Chen Chen scratched his head, not knowing what to answer for a moment. To be honest, the first 2 abstract nicknames were fine, but he never expected that someone would actually link him with Naganzawa. "Are you kidding me? I only killed people with guns, not unarmed civilians, okay?" At this moment, he really felt the trouble of the matter. If I was really accused of this, how could I clear my name in the future? So his attitude became serious. He asked, "What should we do now? I don't plan on doing anything out of the ordinary. What else can we do? Stabilize the situation as soon as possible." Xiaoyu's tone was a little unkind, but of course this unkindness was more of a kind of anger. Chen Chen heard her complaint, so he softened his tone and said, "The situation will definitely be stabilized, and nothing serious will happen to Wanfeng Group again. Peng Shuqing has helped me deprive Wanfeng Group of its right to arm itself. From now on, the business and military power of this group have been completely separated. It won't be that easy for them to stir up trouble. In the future, we won't have to use guns to talk, but will instead confront each other at the negotiation table. It would be better this way." Xiaoyu breathed a sigh of relief, paused for a moment, and suddenly asked again, "You purchased a large number of range-increasing rockets from us. What are you planning to do with them?" "We're planning to modify it." "What? Do you want to modify it for us and then send it over?" "You don't want me to just give you a pole and you just climb up along it. I'll also help you modify it. Why don't you just let me replace it with a large guided one?" "But that's not necessary. I was just joking. What's wrong with that? Is there a problem?" Chen Chen was afraid that Xiaoyu would say, "The purchase volume is too large and it won't pass the review." If that happened, all his subsequent battle plans would be ruined. But unexpectedly, Xiaoyu didn't mention the censorship at all, but said, "You guys won't be able to use this thing if you take it over. It must be modified. I'm here to make 2 requests to you on behalf of some departments. First, you should control the scope of the modification yourself, and do not make anything outside the convention. Second, pay attention to safety. Try to stay away from jobs that are highly dangerous. Clear?" Chen Chen nodded subconsciously, and then asked curiously, "Why do you want me to stay away?" "Blast you to death, you big fool." Xiaoyu on the other end of the phone was thinking secretly in her heart. She almost couldn't help rolling her eyes, but in the end, she suppressed her emotions and said calmly, "Compared to the first point, the second point is actually more important. This is the most critical moment for Pubei. You must not make any mistakes. Don't underestimate the modification work. It doesn't require high technology, but it requires high process. If it's not well controlled and causes a chain explosion, it will be a big accident. It's okay to blow up some equipment, but if something happens to you or your people, all the foundations we've laid will be wiped out. Do you understand?" "Understood. I will spread things out to reduce the risk as much as possible." "Are the principles and procedures clear?" "Clear." Chen Chen answered decisively, and Xiaoyu didn't ask any more questions. The principle of the rain-enhancing bomb is indeed not too complicated. If Chen Chen doesn't even understand this, he won't be able to reach his current position. That's it. We won't ask about the specifics. In short, I still say that you should hold back a little. With a click, the phone was hung up. Chen Chen shook his head and walked out of the room. And at this moment, Xiaoyu pushed the door open and brought him good news. The first batch of rain-enhancing bombs has arrived, along with the launch pad. "Boss, do you want to go take a look?" "Look." Chen Chen's spirits lifted, and when he walked out of the room, what caught his eye was a multiple rocket launcher that looked a bit thin. The biggest feature of the BL-1A rainmaking rocket is its simple structure and low cost. How simple is its structure? In a word, the operating instructions for the 63 Fire stated that it can be launched without relying on a launcher, but the BL-1A actually does not have a launcher at all. Because its launcher is just a large steel box with parallel and symmetrical holes drilled in the front and back, and then steel bars are used to connect the 2 holes to form a launch rail. It is impossible to have any accuracy. In any case, when it was first designed, it had only one functional requirement: to be able to fly stably into the sky and to explode. Under this idea, all unnecessary things are completely discarded, and the minimalism style is fully displayed in it. The other core members of the Dongfeng Corps also ran out to watch the fun. Bai Go walked up and touched the rocket launcher on the launcher and asked, "How much is this thing?" Everyone looked at Suyu, and Suyu coughed and said, "The price we finally negotiated was 2,200 renminbi per launch, and the launcher was given as a gift. It's less than $300 when converted into US dollars. $300? Damn, are you kidding me? A Type 63 rocket costs nearly $5,000 a round." White Dog was dumbfounded. Just now he thought this thing was too crude and didn't look like a weapon at all. But now, $300 US. What else do you want from a bicycle? At this price, even if it explodes in my hand, I will think it is because I ignited it in the wrong way. How many rounds did you buy in total? The White Dog continued to ask. The current purchase is for 11,000 rounds. We originally wanted to buy only 10,000 rounds, but they offered to give all the launchers away for free if we buy 1,000 more rounds. I think it's a good deal. How many launchers were sent? 40 units. What? Not worth it. But it's a good deal. Chen Chen said slowly. In fact, he knew that the cost of the BL-1A rocket launcher was only about 200 yuan, 200 RMB. 40 launchers, a total of only 8,000 yuan. But for these 8,000 yuan, Suyuduo spent 300,000 US dollars. This business is really unique. Of course, although the launch equipment is simple, it is still very accurate with the guarantee of the industrial capacity of the North. If Pubei doesn't buy this thing, he really won't be able to make it. So all in all, this is a mutually beneficial deal, and there is nothing to complain about. So Chen Chen said no more, but immediately pulled the launcher to an open area and conducted a live ammunition test. Of course, he did not shoot at the sky, but instead laid the launcher flat and aimed it at an uninhabited mountain in the distance. The distance was nearly 1 kilometer, and 8 rounds were fired in a salvo. Shichichi, the rocket, made a buzzing sound that was completely different from the 63 rocket, and it sounded like a large rocket. However, whether in terms of range or flight stability, this thing cannot be compared with the skyrocketing monkey. At a distance of 1 kilometer, 8 rockets were scattered within an area with a diameter of nearly 100 meters. This accuracy cannot be said to be good. It should be said to be satisfactory. There is no hope for a high-precision strike, but what if it is a rocket attack? Not only enough, but more than enough. This thing is powerful. Looking at the thin smoke produced by the explosion of silver iodide in the distance, Go, who had been watching, couldn't help but speak. That's quite powerful, isn't it? Although it's a rain-enhancing rocket, it also has military potential. To be honest, the positioning of this thing has always been very vague. It feels like it has taken advantage of some kind of loophole. Sure, Dekai, who was standing beside him, answered thoughtfully, and then asked Chen Chen with emotion. Captain, I heard that your meteorological department in the north has a lot of weapons and even a lot of anti-aircraft guns. Is that true? That was too real. So real that it even seemed fake. Chen Chen couldn't help but complain in his heart. In fact, the Weather Bureau in the north has a long tradition of making weapons. After the founding of the People's Republic of China, the north faced military pressure from the United States and the Soviet Union. And the air defense pressure was even more astonishingly great. Therefore, since that era, the North has attached great importance to the construction of air defense systems, and in a very short period of time, it established a 3-in-1 national air defense system, that is, the trinity of civil air defense, key point air defense, and field air defense. So in that era, many cities had civil air defense signs posted in their basements. At the same time, militia anti-aircraft artillery units were deployed near major factories, mines, and key facilities. These militia anti-aircraft artillery units would hold competitions and training sessions every year, as well as target shooting training, to maintain the proficiency of the gunners. However, with the development of the times, more advanced air defense missiles have replaced anti-aircraft guns as the main air defense force. So what should be done with the anti-aircraft guns deployed in civilian facilities? They were simply handed over to the county meteorological bureaus and transformed into artificial weather modification anti-aircraft guns, or human shadow anti-aircraft guns for short. If you go to any county's meteorological bureau, you can basically see several to dozens of Type 55 37mm single-barrel anti-aircraft guns, or Type 65 37mm double-barrel anti-aircraft guns. If it is expanded to the whole country, the number of anti-aircraft guns alone exceeds 10,000. If assembled, this is already the largest anti-aircraft gun group in the world. Of course, the Meteorological Bureau has more than just anti-aircraft guns. Under the inheritance of fine traditions, rocket launchers have also begun to enter the sequence of meteorological equipment. The most exaggerated thing among them is probably the Shinning 400 rocket that Chen Chen had seen in his previous life. Although this thing is called a rocket, it can be launched vertically, change trajectory, and even has terminal penetration capability. Rockets? That makes sense. Anything with a range of 2,000 kilometers is called a rocket. But having said that, will this thing be exported in the future? If that's the case, then it would be really fun. Chen Chen keenly noticed Shurdakai's thoughts, but he really had no way to answer this question. So he just coughed and said casually, maybe it's true to get away with it. Shurdakai didn't think too much about it, as he certainly knew what Chen Chen was worried about. So the test was successfully completed. After tidying up everything, Chen Chen called He Bongxiong and He Bupa and asked them to start arranging the renovation work. Both of them had run arsenals before and were very familiar with the procedures. Chen Chen didn't need to explain too much, and a series of tasks were quickly arranged. What Chen Chen actually did was just emphasize 3 key points to them. First, the charge weight must be consistent with the original charge weight, and the center of gravity of the rocket must not be changed arbitrarily, which will affect the aerodynamic performance. Secondly, safety isolation should be ensured during the loading process, so that even if something goes wrong or an accident occurs, it will not lead to the complete loss of the equipment. Third, rockets with different charge should be distinguished and marked and classified according to their functionality. Both of them knew the importance of Chen Chen's 3 points, and they repeatedly assured him on the phone that there would be absolutely no problems. But Chen Chen knew that guarantees were useless, and the specific results could only be seen in the finished product. However, considering the efficiency of the 2 militiamen using guns to force them out, he probably won't have to wait long.